looks a little better.
Yeah, we can just move the screen right here then.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Nothing but the best.
Should be good then, right?
Yeah.
So I'll look and see. Put on your, I put one with the.
We'll just ask it. It's odd, huh? Okay, welcome, folks. This is the City of Lowell Zoning Board of Appeals. This is a public hearing. Today is January 11th, 2010. It's the first meeting of the new year, and we have several continuances on. I'll take those in order. The first one is ZB 2009, number 43. This is a special permit and variance request for signs. The applicant is Barlow Signs, 732 Rogers Street, special permit for the internal illumination of electronic changeability for the alteration of an existing sign and a variance to exceed the maximum sign size according to section 6.3.2 and 6.3.4 of the zoning ordinance. Is anybody here representing the petitioner? We did receive a letter through the zoning office. Dear Ms. Hayes Hackett, whereas the planning department has not moved forward with any final decisions or ordinance change proposals regarding electronic changeable signs, nothing has changed since the last ZBA meeting, and they're requesting a continuance until the January 25th meeting. Before we vote whether or not to continue that, is anybody here wishing to speak either in favor or opposition of that petition? This is on 732 Rogers Street. Anybody in favor? And hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Anybody in opposition? And hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. So we'll open up for discussion and vote. Bill? Any comment? Jack?
No comments.
Esna? Corey?
No comment, Mr. Chairman.
Rick?
No comment.
Okay, so we need a motion to continue?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to continue till January the 25th, 2010.
Second the motion.
Okay.
Mr. Bailey?
Continue.
I vote to continue. Mr. Geary?
Continue to January 25th, 2010.
Mr. Knox?
Continue to January 25th, 2010.
Mr. Noon?
Continue. Okay, that matter has been unanimously continued to January 25th, 2010. There'll be no further notice. Anybody wishing to speak in favor or in opposition of that petition is welcome to appear that night. Moving on to the second petition, ZB 2009, number 45, special permit for telecommunications. The applicant is Clear Wireless LLC. The address is 403 Andover Street. For the installation of telecommunication panels, the dish antennas and related equipment inside stealth, steeple housing, and related equipment on the side of a church for Clear Wireless according to section 7.6 of the zoning ordinance. Anybody here representing that petitioner? Welcome, sir.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Scott Lacey with the law firm of Prince Lobel, Glovsky & Ty, representing the applicant. Subsequent to the last meeting, a couple of things have happened. One, the board had asked us to look at alternative sites, alternative technologies. We also met with the Belvedere Neighborhood Association to explain the site, answer any questions that the neighborhood might have with respect to the site. From our perspective, we think the meeting went well. We addressed their issues and their questions. At this point, what I'd like to do is introduce Andrew Thompson, who can summarize all of the alternative sites that were analyzed with respect to this particular search area. And then we can subsequently discuss alternative technologies that were also investigated.
Okay, I have a note here saying that you had requested a continuance.
Of this matter, I was not aware of that, and I don't think that that was correct. One of the other issues that the board had indicated was that they were going to look into hiring an independent consultant.
Right, and so maybe that's where I'm
To our knowledge,
misinterpreting
that
those.
hasn't happened yet.
So that has not happened yet. I think the city council had to weigh in on exactly the process and what we're supposed to do. So maybe what we're looking for is for you to assent to a continuance. Rather than get into it now, I don't think there's any neighbors here, and, or there may be, but,
We just didn't know if it would be beneficial to the board to present the information that we had, to see if the board members had any additional questions. And this way, at the next meeting, we could address any questions that the board has, or any remaining questions, in addition to anything that any independent consultant happens to raise in their final reports. I mean, we would agree to a continuance either way, but we are here and we can present the information to the board if they want.
right, you can proceed in any way you wish. I'm just thinking, does it make more sense to wait when everybody's here, rather than have you do the presentation all over again? But it's entirely up to you.
At this point, I think I'd like to present. This way, in case the consultant has any additional information, there's stuff in the record, and that can get flushed out between the applicant and any consultant that's hired by the board.
Okay, and let me just ask a question before you. Is anybody here wishing to speak either in favor or in opposition of this petition? Okay, and I think that what happened is they would, do you want to, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I think based on just the number of people who probably would have been here if for some reason there was a miscommunication that it was going to be continued,
That's fine. we can
just
continue.
based on the neighborhood concern.
Right.
It may be best, we're obviously going to have to present this again if that's what the board is,
Right,
leaning
I
towards.
just don't want to, I want to avoid creating any animosity where you don't have to.
I think I agree with you completely.
Okay,
I was surprised that I didn't see faces in the crowd, so I
right,
think.
and that was, I misread this, but I think what they were saying is we're actually, the city is actually looking for you to agree and assent to a continuance. So if that's something you're willing to do, we can postpone the presentation until the next date. Corey, did they give a date where?
It's my understanding, the next meeting, Mr. Chairman, which is January the 25th, 2 weeks from tonight.
So I think by that time, the city will be ready with and probably prior to that, you'll be put in touch with whoever the peer review specialist will be,
That's fine.
okay?
Sure.
All right, so, so you're agreeing to a continuance?
We are.
Voluntarily?
Yes.
Okay. So, anybody here wish to speak in favor of that? None? And anybody in opposition? And none. So, discussions, Bill?
Mr. Chairman, just one question. Can you give me the date that you met with the association?
It was December,
I don't have the
I think
date.
it was December 16th.
Yeah, we don't have the date off the top of my head, but I can certainly provide that.
I mean, you're talking in the last week, 2 weeks,
No,
before,
it was in
Before
December.
Christmas.
It was before Christmas.
before Christmas? Okay. And how long did that meeting last? Any idea?
At least an hour.
Okay. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and Jack, anything?
Just a comment based on input. Petitioner stated you had met with the association and you thought it was a favorable meeting? Is that what you
That's
imparted to
correct.
us?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And Vezir, anything? Nothing. And Corey?
I'll just make a quick comment, Mr. Chairman, that in all fairness, I think it's best that, the petitioner does do the presentation when the neighborhood group is here and the neighbors are here to hear his new findings. So I am all for the continuance. Thank you very much.
All right, and Rick, anything?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Now, Counselor, is January 25th, does that suffice, 2 weeks from tonight?
That's fine.
Okay, that being said, I'll make a motion to continue till January the 25th, 2010.
Seconded.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Bailey?
Continue.
I vote to continue. Mr. Geary?
Continued, January 25th.
Mr. Knox?
Continue to January 25th.
Mr. Noon?
Continue.
Okay, sir, it's been unanimously continued to January 5th. Anybody wishing to appear and speak on behalf or in opposition to that petition, whether you're here or at home, you can show up that night. That will probably be one of the final meetings for this petition. So we'll see you on the 25th.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next matter is ZB 2009, number 53, special permit and variance, Harkins Real Estate, Inc., 82 Homestead Road. This is a traditional single-family, a special permit to reconstruct a non-conforming structure after demolition with variances to allow construction on an undersized lot frontage, and from maximum allowed front yard setback according to sections 4.5.7 and 5.1 of the zoning ordinance. So, my notes tell me the last time, Attorney Flood, we were here, there was some neighborhood opposition, and you made a suggestion that they meet with the neighbors and
Right.
have a structural engineer assess the house, and
Right.
we did receive that letter from the structural engineer saying that, in his opinion, the house is not structurally sound whatsoever and needs to be
Torn down.
demolished.
And we had a meeting at my office last Tuesday, the 5th. We sent out a letter to all the abutters. Only one couple came, the Brownings came, and she was the spokesperson here the last time. I don't see her here tonight. And her concern was the location of the parking, and that's why we've done a third plan on the parking, where she wanted it closer to the left side of the property, and have one lane coming in and have it extend out to 2 spaces. And that was at her suggestion, but I think she understood. We showed her the engineering report, and I think she understood that it had to come down, so.
Okay, and I think we were looking for some possible ideas of what the house would look like, or,
It would be the plan that we gave you.
so that's what it's
Yeah,
gonna be?
The plan that we
Okay.
gave you, yes, because we try to incorporate what it looked like,
Okay.
what was there.
All right. All right, anybody here wish to speak in favor of this petition, in favor? And hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Anybody here wishing to speak in opposition? In opposition to this petition, and hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. We'll open up to the board for discussion and vote. Bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to petitioner. So the parking plan will be what was submitted tonight?
Tonight, right.
And that'll be for 2 parking or 3?
2 spaces, correct.
2 spaces,
right.
okay. Now, I think there was some discussion about the number of spaces, whether it be 2 or 3. Is there any way to get 3 in there, or is 2 the maximum?
Well, we put 2 in there. If you'd rather have 3, we could do that, but I think she wanted to keep it, her house is on the right, and that's why we moved it a little to the left.
She's to the left of the property.
As you look at it from Homestead, she's to the right.
Okay, so the way I look at this, Counselor, I think I brought this up the last meeting about the, whether there was an egress, there's a driveway.
There is no legal easement whatsoever.
So is there like a buffer between this driveway and the current driveway that's in there?
There's 3 feet between what's there, but that other driveway might come over and encroach onto our property a little,
Right, because if you look at the property, that driveway comes,
onto our property.
and that's just the way each of the lots are cut anyways. So currently you have it at 2, and there is room for 3 if we wanted to do 3.
If you wanted to expand it, yeah, there's room for 3 there.
And would the expansion be left to right, or would it
It would be it'd have to go to the right.
Yep,
Yeah.
okay. And would the petitioner have any issue with that?
I don't think so. You have a problem with that? No. No.
Okay. How about a landscape plan? Is that something we asked? I think we asked at the last meeting. Is that true or not true?
I don't think you asked for a plan. I think we wanted to keep as much green as we could. That's why we had 2 spaces instead of 3.
Mr. Chairman, did we ask for a landscape plan at the last meeting?
My recollection is Mr. Jenkins had, I think, volunteered to do some greenery as much that was appropriate around that site. That's my only recollection. I don't know that, we may have asked him to look into it. I think during the discussion, he just made some reference to, you know, they're gonna put up some shrubbery and some greenery.
He's here if you
Oh,
want.
okay, maybe he can,
Hi, yeah, Dean Jenkins. I think what we had talked about was making sure that there was a buffer, because the neighbors were really concerned about the amount of parking spaces that were along the front or along the side, that it wouldn't be something that would become, you know, all the way along the front cars. So what we had discussed at that point in time was potentially between, let's say, the edge of the driveway and where you would have a walkway heading into the front of the house, we'd probably do some plantings along that route, which would basically say, here's your driveway, here, you know, here's some plantings that would go along the edge of that driveway from the house toward the street, that would block that off from having cars, let's say, you know, on the other side of it. So we would be, you know, inclined to put something that said would do some sort of buffering, whether it be either with a visual barrier with a stockade, or, I mean, a post and rail fence, or with plantings. But we're trying to get as much grass as humanly possible in the
Right,
front of
and
that as
And I know
well.
you explained that at the last meeting. I was just checking to see if if we were looking for more of a.
Yeah, no, that was
plan per se.
basically, you know, we,
How about where the existing or the proposed driveway is?
it's close
And
to the
again-
other
Again,
driveway.
with that current driveway, is there any idea to have any, whether it's arborvitae's or anything at all for a buffer?
It's close, and you know, I mean, what happens is when you get to these, this house seems to like, if we push it back, you know, of course, it's only 21 feet of frontage. So we have to go back a significant amount in order to be able to get to a place where, you know, we can do some vegetation and so forth. So, because, you know, if we go back 10 feet into the yard, we're still only 24 feet across from lot line to lot line. You take into account a 3 feet off of one driveway, and then take into account a 20-foot space across, you know, we're running out of room. You know what I mean? So we, you know, we need to make sure that, you know, before we can commit and say, yeah, you put a fence or something, some vegetation between, you know, we'd have to make 100% sure that it would fit and work. You know, you don't want to be left with having too small of a driveway in the front of that property, because the concerns of the neighbors were that people are going to park on the street, and we were trying to eliminate that part of it first.
And that's why I was asking, I believe we were talking, if we could get 3 in there,
You
that'd be great.
could, you know, you could, but then again, and there was some discussion, you know, and again, with the neighbors, you know, we taken into account that we set a meeting and one person showed, and we talked about it, that parking aspect of it. You know, we had talked before, and I think Mr. Bienvenu had talked about saying, well, geez, I want to limit it to 2, because now you've got people that are going to be parking multiple cars. So, you know, honestly, it's whatever the board feels is best suited for the site. We would take 3 parking spaces, believe me, because, you know, I guess common sense would tell you that potentially it would be better if a visitor is parking off the site than on the road, and creating any problems with the neighbors. So we could do that easily without having to do any movement. I don't think the house sits in a pretty good spot. We could go a little bit to the left of the house, you know, and run it up straight and go a little deeper into the lot. So if you look at what we have for a proposed plan, we could come forward a little bit along that left-hand side too. So, you know, even if the board felt like, you know what, don't pave it, or if you're gonna pave it, you know, make sure it's only single length, because you could get it almost all the width. Or, again, if the board so chooses, we could get closer to that lot line with paving, and, you know, I don't know if that's what you want to do, so. So we're really kind of looking to, you know, to do what the neighborhood wanted, which was to create 2 driving spaces, and if we want to get a third just to make sure that there was parking off that site. It's very easily attainable here within what we have by pushing this house back the way we've done it and demolishing what's existing.
And tree removal, you're going to try to, well, I know you'd mentioned about trying to keep that to a minimum, or
Say that
as far
again,
as
excuse me?
tree removal.
Yes,
I
I
know
mean,
there's
you know.
a few larger ones in the back there, I don't know what your
And they're a
plan
good
is.
buffer. So again, you know, you want to create a yard, but you want to create a buffer too, because there's, you know, the school out behind there and so forth. You'd like to create as much of a buffer as you possibly could.
Well, there's an existing fence back there anyways, if I
Right.
remember right, so. In
Not-
fact, I think it's basically enclosed with
It is, not in
fencing in
great
back.
shape, not in great
No, no,
shape, though.
But at least
Oh,
there's.
but there.
Yep. All right. Mr. Flood, the meeting you arranged with the neighborhood, was that by phone call or a
No,
letter?
a letter was sent out, yep.
And was that sent to pretty much the immediate?
The immediate
abutters?
abutters,
Yep.
everyone around, yep. And the only one, the Brownings came, and she was the one that had the concern about the location.
And we didn't receive any letters at all, did we, Mr. Chairman, that somebody couldn't show up tonight and?
No,
still
I
in
had no correspondence at all regarding this petition from any neighbors.
This is a, well, we got, I might as well submit this. This is a letter we got.
Okay. Yep.
So this is a letter signed by Jeanette Therault. I assent to the proposal submitted by Hawkins Real Estate to raise the current building located at 82 Homestead Road, Lowell, and to erect a three-bedroom, single-family dwelling in its place. So make that part of the record.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Okay, and Jack?
No, that was my principal concern, was the meeting with the neighbors. Counselor has addressed that. The Browns who did attend, they were conveying to you that the other neighbors did support the petition the way it had been modified?
I think most of the people that were here the last time were not owners, but were renters. They were renters, they weren't owners, and
Okay.
these people were owners. And they're the ones that showed the concern last time, and they came to the meeting, and this is the major concern that they had on the parking, so that's why we came up with that new.
And what was the impression that you had after the meeting? That they would support it based on
Yeah,
the additional parking going to 3, or would they be satisfied with 2?
They were talking two. They were talking two.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I do also concur with Jack, that is, the last time we have a lot of neighbor coming in and have some questions, and we postpone it, and Attorney Flood has met with them and addressed their concerns, and with the proposed parking and the work that Mr. Hacken have done in the past, I too will support this petition tonight.
Thanks. And my only question, I think, is procedural. There's, Jim, if I'm reading this right, there's one request for special permit to reconstruct, and then there's variance requests, one for an undersized lot, one for the lot frontage, and another one for the variance.
The maximum setback,
So there's actually 3 variances?
3 variances and a special permit.
All right, so maybe to take the safer route, we'll take 4 separate votes ultimately,
Sure,
and the special permit and then variance A, B, and C, just so the record's clear.
okay.
All right? Anything, Corey?
Yes, I do have a few comments, Mr. Chairman. Well, besides, I want to commend the neighborhood for their concern. Definitely, this was at one time anyway, an adorable little home, and the neighbors did get somewhat attached, and I appreciate their concern down there, in all honesty. But we do have a certified letter from a structural engineer saying the house is not structurally sound, and I think the neighborhood will benefit greater with a new home there, and that's my honest opinion. And more important than that is we're moving the parking off the street, and we all know it's a congested area, and this will definitely be suitable down there. So I do like the plan. I think the petitioner certainly did his due diligence with the neighborhood in revising the plan, and I can see it clear to support this, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Okay, Rick?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right, is anybody here well, we already did that, right? Okay, so we need a motion.
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Go ahead.
Before we vote, are we going to vote on, or can we? Are we going to institute whether it's going to be 2 or 3 parking spaces?
I think we're voting on the plan as submitted, which shows 2 parking, a driveway in flared out to 2 parking spots. So does anybody want to amend that? My feeling is, I think after the meeting with the neighbor, since that neighbor's the only one who had any concerns, I think it's probably sufficient the way it is, at least from my perspective, but.
The only comment I would make is the petitioner himself alluded to the fact that the third space, if it were created, would reduce the likelihood of parking
On the street.
on-street. That's the only reason I even
You
brought
can
it up.
amend it and you can call for 3.
Which was one of the neighbors' concerns, correct?
Now, if we, one question, Mr. Chairman, if we go a little, to satisfy Mr. Knox, which is a genuine concern, if we go a little deeper into the lot and make 3 spots, do we need another variance for that, Mr. Chairman, is my question
No.
without?
I don't think so.
No, the only, you need the variance for this, well, you don't have the frontage because it's a prior non-conforming lot. We have to go back because the maximum setback, we had to exceed that. And the third one was the size of the lot. So, no, the parking wouldn't affect it at all.
Okay. So, so there'd be no opposition from the applicant's viewpoint to extend that to 3, moving it towards the left rather than the right?
Yeah, I mean, I would think if we stayed along that left side, that would, or at least put, earmark the spot for it. You know, let us determine whether that's the way to go or not at the, you know, we can talk to some of the neighbors as we get going through it too. But as long as we can get going, at least with the idea potentially, you know, that a third spot would go along that side, you know, again, I think, whatever you folks, you know.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think to have some,
Bad park, it's, you know, it's tough over there for parking, okay? And you know, trying not to speak for all the neighbors, but the concerns were twofold, where they were really, like, worried about, you know, people parking on the street. And honestly, you know, our goal here, and it basically was our idea, you know, to come up with the one spot in that would still save a half of a curb cut for somebody, fan it out to 2 spaces, and then if we add that third space along the side, I think that would probably do, you know, it would give it, even if the purchaser had 3 cars, it would take any contention away from, you know, what we were trying to accomplish there and ultimately what, you know, what the neighbors wanted.
right, but I guess my question is, if we put that as a condition, is that something that you'll unquestionably be able to comply with?
Unquestionably, I'll comply with
Okay, so,
Yeah, it could probably make it subject to approval by the building department.
yeah, we could do that, Bob, right? Okay,
So make this a condition.
Mr. Chairman,
go ahead, Bill.
so are we talking stack parking for 2 and then a single on the side?
Stack for 2
Right.
and one to the right of that toward the front.
No, I know the neighborhood was talking about it, but I think even you, Mr. Jenkins, we were talking about how many occupants would probably be in that home because of the size of the home. And more than likely, you're gonna have, you know, a couple both with a car, and it could be a teenager or whatever.
You know,
There's the
I mean,
third vehicle.
Based upon what I've seen for the people purchasing this style home, I've built a number of them in the city, is that it's usually a young couple with young children, but, you know, but people visit. And
Right.
in this case, because it's a, you know, a busy area with a lot of houses close to each other, that we might be better, and no frontage here, we might be better off getting some cars off the road.
I propose 3, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so,
We would make that a kind of condition with the special permit, Mr. Chairman?
yep, and with, subject to the approval of the building commissioner, Mr. Camacho.
That's the way you do it. Yeah.
So the first vote would take is the vote for a special permit to reconstruct the non-conforming structure. And we could put this condition on that.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, with that being said, I'll make a motion to approve the special permit to reconstruct a non-conforming home.
Second motion.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Bailey?
Proof.
I vote to approve. Mr. Geary?
Approve.
Mr. Knox?
Approve.
Mr. Noon?
Approve.
Okay, the special permit's been approved unanimously. The next petition, the next vote is going to be for the first variance for the undersized lot, and maybe on this one, we should put the condition on
Okay, on the,
the variance for an undersized lot.
okay, make a motion to approve a variance for undersized lot with the following condition that the petitioner would allow for a third parking spot pending the approval of the building commissioner.
And roll call, please.
Seconded.
Second.
Seconded.
And now roll call.
Mr. Bailey?
Approve with condition.
I vote to approve with conditions. Mr. Geary?
Approve with the condition?
Mr. Knox?
Approve with conditions.
Mr. Noon?
Approve with condition.
Okay, the first variance has been approved unanimously with the condition. The second variance is for variance for the lot frontage.
Make a motion to approve the variance for the lot frontage.
Seconded.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Bailey? I vote to approve. Mr. Geary?
Approve.
Mr. Knox?
Approved.
Mr. Noon?
Okay, and the final, you've been approved unanimously for the variance for the lot frontage. The final variance is a variance from the maximum setback.
Make a motion to approve from the variance from the maximum yard setback.
Seconded.
And roll call, please.
Mr. Bailey? I vote to approve. Mr. Geary?
Approve.
Mr. Knox?
Approved.
Mr. Noon?
Okay, and you've been approved unanimously for the variance for the maximum setback. So that takes care of all the votes, I believe.
Yes, thank you.
And you all set, just check with Mr. Camacho about the parking, and you should be all set.
Want me to sign one of these plans?
Yeah, if you have something, Corey, you have something for you to sign?
The original plan.
I've got
is
another one
submitted.
here.
Yeah. And this, either one. Thank you very much. Just anyway, if you can date it too, Jim. To our new secretary, Mr. Belanger.
Not nearly as pretty, but. Okay, okay, yeah.
Okay, the next petition is ZB 2008-24, a modification from November 23rd, '09. Special permit request for signs. The applicant is George Alides Jr. as attorney for. It's 41 Mile Ave. This property's petition is located in a regional retail district to modify previously granted special permit allowing for the addition of an LED facade on an existing billboard upon the state's authority for use of the same.
I'd love to go forward, Mr. Chairman, but I think this lady's ahead of me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
We'll start over again.
Getting ahead of ourselves.
ZB 2009, number 57, special permit and variances, Mario Silva, 248 Middlesex Street, to allow the body art establishment and locate the same within 500 feet of a school pursuant to section 7.3 of the zoning ordinance. Ms. Silva.
Mr. Chairman, before you begin, the petitioner begin, I just want to put on record that I'm the board of trustee of a charter school, therefore I will recuse myself from this meeting.
So Mr. Nunes recused himself, and Mr. Bienvenu will be voting. Welcome, ma'am, sir.
Okay. My name is Christine Jarvis.
Mhm.
Here on behalf of Mario Silva, the applicant. We are applying for a special permit and a variance for a body art establishment. We were continued from the last meeting. A few things have happened. You asked us to meet with some people from the neighborhood, which we did do. The meeting went very well.
I think if I'm just trying to remember, one thing we wanted you to meet with Mrs. Bell and some of the folks around there and talk about your project to them, because I don't think they heard much about it before.
Yes.
I think the second issue was the important issue about the charter school, whether it was staying or leaving, and how that affects anything. So do we have any new information on that?
There is no new information on the charter school, other than it will be voted on January 26th.
The charter school will be.
Yeah. Aside from
Okay.
that, there is not new information on the school.
Well, how did your neighborhood meeting go?
It went very well.
Do you want to tell us about it?
Met
Yeah,
with-
you have to speak into the
I
microphone.
apologize, it's feeding back. We met with Karen Bell, a gentleman from the Historic Department, someone from Building Inspection, a few other business owners in the neighborhood. We talked about the concerns of the neighborhood, the hopes for the building, and our plan for the business. It seemed to go very well, so.
Okay. So basically, you're just waiting on the decision for the school now? Is that kind of where you are? You're kind of in limbo until you know about that?
Right.
Okay. Do we have any input from the Neighborhood Association? Ms. Bell?
Hi, Karen Bell, 80 Middlesex Street, representing JAMBRA, the Jackson Appleton Middlesex Business and Residents Association. And part of the issue with the last meeting was the condition of the building into which Mario and Chrissy want to put this tattoo gallery. And we met with Steve Stoll, and from the Historic Commission, also James Erickson, who is the person from the Department of Planning and Development in charge of the Jackson Appleton Middlesex development area, as well as Fred Faust, who was here with me at the last meeting, and one of our members of JAMBRA, and Jim Lachulis, who is a building owner there and also a representative from our board. The meeting went extremely well, and I am here to speak really in favor of, as opposed to in opposition where I was last time. The last time, the opposition was not really for the business, other than not understanding what the business, the nature of the business would be, and the people involved. But my main opposition was allowing kind of an edgy type of business to go into a building which is not meeting codes at this point, and therefore bringing something into that neighborhood, into that building, without addressing those code issues, I felt was the wrong way to go. We've been assured by those in the city that we would develop a team and a team approach to go in and not only address this building, but other buildings in the neighborhood. And we feel that that time has come, and we will go forward, starting with this building in question first and going on. So I think with some of the questions that this board had brought up and some of the conditions that we were asked to address, I think those have been addressed. The charter school is not within anything that we discussed.
Okay. And do you have any information on the charter school? I think that was one of the issues that the board was concerned with.
I only have rumors. And certainly we have all heard that in order for the school department to absorb the number of students, the 900 students, that would put a great deal of strain on the school. I know that the owner of the property on Jackson Street has been speaking to the charter school about them continuing at least a year, if not perhaps 2. So that was not really an issue that I think has been brought to light. I think they have a lot more that they have to do. I know that the head of the school had stepped down, and the board, I think, is somewhat fragmented as far as what they are going to be able to do. But I think that the state and local government are really in favor of doing everything they can to keep the charter school there, at least for 1 or 2 years. That was my understanding. But
Well, knowing that area like you do you think that this business would have a negative effect on the school or vice versa
no.
on this? You think they could coexist?
I think, again, run properly in a well-attended building, I think that the business could, and especially with people who we have found to be responsive not only to your questions and your stipulations, but also to neighborhood concerns. And I think we can keep it that way.
Okay, well, that's helpful. Okay. Anybody else here wishing to speak in favor of this petition, in favor? Okay, and hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Anybody here wishing to speak in opposition? In opposition to this proposal? And hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed, and we'll open up for discussion and vote. Bill?
Yeah, just a couple of questions, Mr. Chairman. While Ms. Bell was speaking, I was looking through the handout you provided tonight, and you showed your hours of proposed operation. What's the operation time for the charter school? What time do they open and what time do they end?
Mr. Chairman, may I respond?
Sure.
Thank you. Couple of quick comments to you, Mr. Bailey. They open approximately 7 o'clock. They have programs which continue to generally 6 p.m. in the evening. Also, just for public record, the state will have a hearing before the board January 26th, and at that time there will be a definitive decision. But that's the scheduled meeting, I believe, in Malden at the state school board is January 26th. There will be a definitive decision reached at that time as to whether or not there'll be a probationary period set, and/or they will determine to close the school. If they close the school, it will cease to exist when they get to the end of June.
Okay.
Does the school operate on weekends at all?
They have special programs on Saturday, tutoring programs, and some sporting events that also open on Saturdays.
Okay. So does that have any bearing at all with us as far as the operations of the school, or is it just within 500 feet of a school facility?
Well, I think that that's, part of what the variance would have to be, that, the variance for relief from, to have this operation within the distance that they're requesting. How far is it from the school? Have you determined that?
I would say it's about 300 feet.
300 feet? Okay.
To the back of that building.
Okay, I mean, my big concern, Bill, was that how the businesses that are currently on Jackson Street and Appleton Street and that whole area, Middlesex Street, how they would think that this business might affect the school or anything around there. And I know Ms. Bell's been there for quite a while, and, I think that if there was a concern, they would already have flushed that out. So I guess that was my biggest concern. And if this is going to be actually as neat as it's proposed here, then I don't think it's going to have a negative effect on the school or vice versa. But, it's really kind of a congested area down there anyway, and there's a lot going on. There's going to be a lot more going on down there. And it seems like this might work, my opinion. Go ahead.
A couple of the points that were brought up in the meeting today, Steve Stoll will be working with the petitioners as far as not just the signage, but how their windows look and what is displayed, et cetera, and therefore what is visible from the street. And he has assured us that he would do that so that everything is extremely tasteful. The other thing that we were hoping, and it seems to be indicated, is that an occupation permit would partially be based on the assurances that all codes, health codes, as well as building codes, et cetera, are complied with. And so those, again, were our main concerns. And if you have a well-run business and looking good, really doesn't matter what the business is, as long as it's legal, of course.
Right. And the other thing we could do, and that we often do, is we'll put on, if people are willing to support it, members are willing to support it, a 90-day review period. So if for some reason it's reported to us that it's not working the way it was presented, then, we do have some recourse. So that would be something that's almost automatic in a situation like this. So there's you're looking for a special permit to allow the body art establishment, and then you're looking for a variance from the 500 feet away from a school.
Yes, we are.
Where you're about 300. So the relief is for the 200 feet that give or take, that's the difference.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, anything else?
Well, the other thing I'd like to bring up, and I think we mentioned this the last time, that building, or that block has one dumpster out back that looks like it's used by all the, what are your plans for disposal? Are you going to maintain something on site, or are you going to maintain something off site?
We would certainly do whatever we needed to do. We would get our own dumpster. In terms of our trash, it's medical waste, so we need to dispose of it properly. But just day-to-day trash, I mean, we would.
Well, the health department has their own code on that,
Absolutely,
so
yep.
you might want to look, well, I'm assuming
we-
you know what the code is for that, so that might be something else you might want to think of. But no, on the business hours they were showing, Mr. Chairman, they're proposing are going to be closed Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I mean, I'm just thinking of the school being open normally Monday through Friday, if they're going to be closed 3 days alone, it kind of minimizes or reduces the potential impact, but
Yeah, I don't know, are we reading that right? The hours we propose to operate are Sunday, 12 to 6, close Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, 12 to 6?
No, I'm sorry.
closed.
That's a weird sentence, I apologize. Closed Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday, 12 to 6. It's not closed 3 days. We're
okay.
only intending on closing on
I
Mondays.
don't have my glasses on.
I read it the same way at first,
I
and
didn't
then
have my glasses on, I'm sorry.
My apologies.
so you'd be open 6 days a week,
That's correct.
basically 12 to 6, except Thursday and the weekend a little bit later.
That's right.
Okay. Jack?
My biggest concerns, Ms. Bell addressed, and with her position and involvement in that area, if anyone has their finger on the pulse of what's taking place, Ms. Bell does, and if she is comfortable now with the petitioner, then I would be inclined to support the petition. The other two comments I would make, first, as long as, when I mean legally, the variance, as far as the proximity to the school, it's under our jurisdiction to grant that variance, then I would also support it. And just a comment that I still chuckle is the chairman's comment at the last meeting that his concerns would be greater addressed to the incoming court and some of the characters that may be leaving the courthouse, which is something that I think I chuckled for a couple of days on afterwards. So I think all that being said, and with what appears to be the efforts on behalf of the petitioner to address the issues that we and her abutters have addressed, then I would support the petition. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And I think the only condition I would want, and I think that you discussed it, is that it's approved by the Historic Commission, Steve Stoll, for, frontage, your window frontage, your window signage, or however you're gonna, whatever his task is in that process. Corey?
Yes, you, Mr. Chairman. I am in agreement with my colleagues. I do have a concern, though, with the charter school, whether it goes or stays, but I want to lean, I kind of want to restrict you a little bit on your window flashings, whatever. What are your intentions there as far as signage and stuff like that, may I ask?
Tasteful signage, meeting historical guidelines and requirements, and window displays being tasteful, showing artwork, not depicting tattoos, not depicting some sort of urban culture, just very tasteful art, like a gallery. It'll look like an art gallery from the outside.
Okay, yes, well, I guess with the chairman's condition that with the guidelines, you would be to follow the historic board guidelines as far as signage. I think that would satisfy me in that regard. But on the flip side, I would like to, for starters, commend Karen Bell for what you do down there, Karen. The neighborhood has come so far in the last 10 years, and we could have not done it without you, and we can't go any further without you. So I do hope you stay involved. We need you down there, and this is yet another Bronze Star for you. So it's a fine line here. We're trying to build businesses. She's very, very fair, but at the same time, we want landlords to step up too. We have close to $1 billion going in that neighborhood in the next 10 to 20 years. And, these landlords have fallen on hard times in the past, but, you're the only vacancy in the building if this were to get approved. So, it's time we get these property owners to step up, and it's a fine line. We don't want to handcuff the petitioner, which you're trying to do. We're trying to help businesses too. So, Karen, well done. Thank you very much for your help, and I do support the petition. Thank you very much.
Okay, Rick?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I have a question about the trial period. Could we make the trial period 6 months, 1 year, 6 months and a 1 year, and then see how it works out down there, again, with the charter school, possibly moving, possibly staying. And yes, we do have to fill those spaces down there. It's kind of, it's desperate need down there.
So, Rick, you're saying instead of the 90, you say maybe one at 6 months and another one at a year?
Yes,
Okay, I think that probably makes better sense.
it'll show us what's going on, and Karen can get back to us on how it's working down there, and if we have any problems with the school or any other things. And hopefully we'll see some improvements on that building that they're gonna rent. Interior, exterior, I mean, it's in need of work. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so we're looking at, we discussed the 3 conditions, or actually 2. One is the approval of this Historic Commission, Steve Stoll, of any window signs or... And the next one would be that we do 2 review periods we set now, one at 6 months from, on or about 6 months from tonight, and another one on or about a year from tonight.
So would that be opening, Mr. Chairman? How do you want, from opening or from tonight?
I would do from approval from tonight. I think that's what we usually do, so I know it takes a month before they appeal it.
Okay, with that being said, I'll make a motion to approve the special permit to open a body art establishment with the following conditions: that the petitioner follow Historic Board guidelines regarding signage, and 2 review periods will be the second condition, 1 in 6 months from approvals, and the second 1 year from approvals.
Okay, we need a second?
Second the motion.
And we need a roll call.
Mr. Bailey?
Approve with conditions.
I vote to approve with conditions. Mr. Geary?
Approve with conditions.
Mr. Knox?
Approved with conditions.
Mr. Bienvenu?
Approve with conditions.
Okay, Mayor and Sir, you've been approved unanimously with the conditions we discussed. You'll be back here on or about 6 months and then a year, so I encourage you to check in with the zoning office at about that time, and just comply with the issue regarding Steve Stoll Historic, and we wish you well.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I think you have to sign one, you know what? You could just sign this cover sheet and date it, just so we have something. Anyway, yeah, a lot of pens.
Maybe the...
Yep, just sign and put a date. Today, the 10th, the 11th, 2010. Thanks, good luck. Okay, the next petition is ZB 2008-24 modification, November 23rd, 2009, special permit regarding signs. The applicant is Georgia Lighties Esquire, as attorney for the applicant. 41 Mile Ave, this is located in a regional retail district, to modify a previously granted special permit allowing for the addition of an LED facade on an existing billboard upon the state's authority for use of the same.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, George Cielides Jr., 133 Market Street, Lowell. Perhaps a couple of housekeeping things, if I could, while Kelly Barrett, who's a representative of the sign company, gets herself set up over there, and so we're not distracted too much. First of all, Mr. Chairman, last week I dropped off at the zoning office one of these pamphlets. Did the board members get? It's not the standard size, it's more like the legal size.
That was in our package tonight.
Okay, I would hope that everybody got a copy of that. In addition to that, Ms. Barrett, who's setting up right now, is going to make a slide presentation to the board, and if it's all right with the chairman, I'll give you a copy of each one of those so that we can the audio visuals how.
That's, yeah.
In addition to those two items, I also submitted to the board this evening in a blue folder the standard submission that I have give that is sort of like a statement of the case with some other information for the board. So with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I guess I'll try to get started.
Go ahead, yep.
Okay. First of all, I'm here this evening with my client and the owner of the billboard, Mary Burns, whom you've all met before when we were here before the board. With me as well is Peter Doyle, the gentleman in the sling in the front row, who broke his collarbone recently. But he's the landlord of this property. And also with me is Ms. Kelly Barrett and Bob Messier, who's Representative Kelly and Bob are representatives of Daktronics, which is the company that, if the board sees fit to allow us to do so, will do the installation work. And Kelly is our expert in terms of the information that I think will help you in understanding a lot more about how LED signs work. So with that said, let me just give you a little bit about the project, if I may. Simply put, we're here tonight to ask for a special permit to convert the two-sided sign on the property one at 41 Mile Avenue, immediately adjacent to State Highway Route 3, to an LED sign. You probably recall that almost a year and a half ago, we were before the board to seek a permit for this sign. And at the time, we said that what we really wanted to do was to employ a new LED technology system, which at that point hadn't really been approved for use in this state, but that has great informational opportunities for the community, for the city and the surrounding area, including public service announcements such as Amber Alerts, Senior Alerts, advertisements for the Winterfest and Folk Festival, etc. Well, now the state has finally agreed and has approved their use, and in fact, they're being installed in many locations all over the state, including right down here on I-495 in our sister city down the river in Lawrence, right adjacent to the highway there. Many of you have probably seen that display board. And in addition to that, there are many other boards that are in the process of being approved. Mary, let me just say again so that I can remind you, Mary Burns is Lowell born and raised, and she's a Lowell businesswoman who's investing her life currently in this proposition. She's putting her many years of knowledge and experience in the billboard industry to work in a new company that she's formed. She's always been a true devotee to the city and bettering our city, and this is her startup business. Not big. This is not some big corporation from outside that's coming in to do this. This is Mary's own business, and she's here caring about our community and not just profits. She's putting her own life on the line, basically, by making an investment in this new technology. She's already started by the first investment she made, and she's now building on that, or wants to build up beyond that. And also at the same time, this is the property that's been owned, that is currently owned by Peter Doyle, who's also a Lowell family, that Lowell Provision and Alpine Butcher, for almost 100 years. We feel that our proposal will benefit both of those Lowell businesses, obviously, but equally, if not more important, we believe it will be a great benefit to other businesses and families and the city of Lowell itself. More than 100,000 cars a day pass by this location on Route 3. These people will be able to get information about Lowell businesses and their products. New businesses to Lowell means surviving and growing, especially in this tough economy. More business generates more job availabilities for Lowell citizens. More business brings more revenues into the city coffers with a more vibrant economy. Tax revenues, parking revenues, meals taxes, and hotel revenues all increase, and everyone gains, including the homeowners, who will then have more commercial businesses to pay more of the share of the real estate taxes. On the other side of the ledger, this proposal to the city costs the city and the taxpayers not one single penny. No roads to build, no sewer lines, no water lines, no traffic concerns, not one single penny in cost to the city. This project is on a site already permitted for sign use in a regional retail zone for businesses and is consistent with the city master plan, which calls for areas such as this to, and I quote directly from that master plan, promote the development of businesses that draw their markets from the citywide and regional service areas. We want to promote the city of Lowell and its benefits, including such things as Winterfest, Folk Festival, and so many wonderful events at the Lowell Memorial Auditorium, the Songus Arena, LaLachia Baseball Field, as well as the university and our own UMass, not only their events, but the university itself. We want those 100,000 passers-by not to just pass by, but to come into our city, spend money at our venues already mentioned, spend money at our new Target and our new Lowe's stores, and even at the Alpine Butcher, by the way. I have to give Mr. Doyle a little boost in the process. Spend money at our wonderful restaurants, and at the same time continue to build new jobs for Lowell, like have come into the city with the introduction of Target and Lowe's that this board approved. So, this evening, among others, I have representatives of the company, as I mentioned, that are prepared to add to the LED to the sign if you approve it. Kelly Barrett, as I said, is a Lowellian, but she's not a Lowellian, excuse me, but she's possessed of a very famous Lowellian name, one of our great former city managers. And she's going to give you some information on the operation of the system, the lighting, the traffic issues, and related concepts, as well as some ideas of the many benefits to the community at large. Lastly, I want to expand on my client's previous offer to the city. If you recall, when we talked before and we came here, Mary said that she wanted to promote the city of Lowell, wanted to give the city exposure on the billboards to get people into the city. I had already mentioned these items before. If you recall, or those of you who've now seen the sign up there, the very first thing that Mary put up there on both sides was a Lowell, welcome to Lowell, Lowell show-off sign. And in fact, one side is still standing up there. As part of the economic benefit that we think that we can give to the community, Mary is prepared to give to the city 1,200 messages per month. That's 14,400 messages per year that will be available to the city to use in any way it sees fit. And as I was thinking about, and people asked me how some of those would be used, needless to say, it's the city choice. They can promote things like the Winterfest, the Folk Festival, or whatever. But the thought also occurred to me today, wouldn't it be nice if some of those message moments were offered to new businesses as an incentive to come into Lowell, that the city could put up on Route 3 to show that. Anyway, at this point, I'm going to turn the matter over to Kelly because I've already spoken too long as usual. And Kelly's going to give you a little presentation with the PowerPoint, copy of which you have. And then she and Bob and Mary and I and Peter will all be available to answer any questions you have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, George. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Kelly Barrett. As he said, I'm with Daktronics Digital Outdoor. I've been with Daktronics for just under 5 years, and a large part of my responsibility with the company is to come in front of groups like yourself and simply answer any questions that you may have in regards to the technology. We understand it's a new technology for a lot of different communities, and so we want to make sure that any questions that you do have are answered. So I want to keep this informal. If you do have any questions, throughout the presentation, please don't hesitate to go ahead and ask them. So my first point is that what exactly is a digital billboard? There's a lot of different LED signs throughout the country. There's on-premise signs, there's off-premise signs. A digital billboard is considered an off-premise sign, which from the federal government standpoint means that it's strictly a sign within a community that is used for advertising as well as communicating to the public. Am I getting too far away, or is it reading it wrong? Is it
No, I think we can hear you. He's just concerned that if
with the public?
people at home can hear you, yeah. So I don't know, I think if you might be able to lift that up or just bring it over closer to you. I mean, I don't think anybody in the room has a problem hearing you.
Okay. What do you think about that?
That's
a little
fine.
bit better?
And if you prefer to sit down, and
Okay.
that's fine too.
Okay, sounds good. Maybe I'll stand for a little bit, and then if it gets bad, then
Whatever
I'll
you're
sit down.
more comfortable with.
So simply said, a digital billboard is just a sign within a community that is meant for advertising as well as communicating to the public. So what is not a digital billboard? For those of you who were lucky enough to be at Patriot Place this weekend to see the Patriots play, it is not the same digital technology that you're going to find at Patriot Place. It's going to be very similar to the digital technology that's on Route 1 that was put up by Carroll Advertising. The state of Massachusetts has mandated a 10-second hold time and less than a 1-second transition time, which means that this technology physically has no video capabilities. If you wanted to do any type of twinkling, sparkling, flashing, any type of intermittent light, physically the technology does not have the electronic components to allow the technology to do that. So it's strictly a 10-second hold time to less than a 1-second transition time. So there's no fade in, no fade out effects of any kind. Here's just some pictures of some digital billboards that I've installed. I think one of the biggest questions that we see from communities is about the brightness of the digital billboards. And I am extremely empathetic. I don't want a board in my community that's too bright. And Daktronics as a company has about 50% of the digital billboards that have installed in North America. We've done quite a few in the UK. And I assure you, we would not have installed that many digital billboards if we did have issues with the brightness standards. The standards that our displays must ship follow the Dr. Ian Lewing lighting studies and the report that he has put together. This report can also be found online. It's been published at the Illuminating Engineers of North American Society's report, so I can certainly get you that website. I can bring in the report, but it's a really long report. In summary, it says you cannot exceed 0.3 foot candles as a digital display compared to the ambient light. So if the ambient light is reaching, say 0.3 foot candles, we can't exceed 0.6 foot candles. We adhere to these regulations very closely. We take this very seriously. As I said, I don't want something in my community that's too bright. You don't want something in your community that's too bright. Daktronics will also default at a lower level. So if there's a choice of going above and beyond, our technology automatically defaults. So Daktronics' billboard, you're probably wondering, how do we actually manage the light? And so there's a photo sensor that's located on the technology, and it measures the ambient light. As it's measuring the ambient light, it's going to adjust appropriately throughout the day. So if it's a really nice day in the summer and a thunderstorm is rolling in, you know how it gets darker as the thunderstorm is rolling in. Our display is going to run at one level when it's a really bright day, and as that thunderstorm rolls in, that display is automatically going to dim down a little bit throughout the day. It's going to adjust the billboard appropriately based on that ambient light level. To give you a comparison, we operate at that 0.3 foot candles above the ambient light. Say a gas station or a grocery store typically is about 0.7 foot candles above the ambient light. And I have a graph that'll help explain this a little bit further too. Our displays are monitored 24/7, 365 days a year out of our corporate headquarters network operations center. If there is an issue with that ambient light sensor, it's going to send an email back to our corporate headquarters, and it's just going to tell that corporate group that something's wrong with my light sensor. Immediately that display is dimmed down. The last thing we want is for a display to be too bright versus too dim. We have had 0 issues of brightness on Daktronics' digital billboards. This is an example. You might be able to see this a little bit better in your handout. If anybody else would like to see a handout, we can certainly pass them around. But on the left is an example of something that's too bright according to Daktronics. On the right is something that is optimal according to us. This is a document that was put together by some engineers at Daktronics. I've got handouts for the board too. This was put together by some engineers at Daktronics. This is a hypothetical situation of this location and what our assumptions would be for the ambient light levels and for what level we actually think that digital billboard would operate. You can see on the chart that within some of the areas, we've got 0.14, 0.072, 0.005. So as you can see, the digital billboard is running at a pretty low level considering what we would assume the ambient light levels would be at a location such as this. One thing to keep in mind too is it's a digital billboard versus a traditional billboard. People often have the question is this actually gonna be brighter than the traditional billboard that's existing, or will it be dimmer? And the question is, it's not gonna be any brighter than what is existing there right now. Actually, as you get into those wider viewing angles, so as we get into this area and as we come up here, as the farther we get away, it's actually going to be substantially dimmer. With LED technology, it's emitting technology, so it's pushing out. With a static billboard, you're actually working with like actual bulbs, and they're protruding at the static image, and that causes a reflection back off of the static billboard, which actually causes more scatters of light, and it causes the billboard to actually be brighter than it would if you were to look at the illuminance of the static bulbs. So how exactly do you measure how bright a digital billboard is or how bright anything is? A lot of people use a lux meter, also known as a foot candle meter. It's pretty commonly known as a lux meter, but it does measure foot candles as well. We could, in theory, have taken a lux meter to the site of the digital billboard and taken it back to some of the locations. The problem is, an average lux meter, because it's so dim at those locations, that lux meter is measuring the ambient light. It's so far away from where the digital billboard is, it's actually going to measure different ambient lights in that area, which is why it's really difficult to do that for you. So I think one of the biggest questions we get to is how exactly can a digital billboard benefit my community? First and foremost is the Amber Alerts. My company has spent a considerable amount of time and energy working with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. We've integrated our software directly with theirs, and so if there was an Amber Alert anywhere within about 50 miles of this area, that child's face would take over all the advertising on this digital billboard. Typically that lasts for about 4 hours. After 4 hours, for another 48 hours, that child's face becomes a advertisement within the rotation of advertisements. So let's say, for example, there was a child missing in New York City. For some reason, if the National Center had a reason to believe that that child was headed towards Boston, that child's face would go up on this digital billboard. Any type of missing person alert, a lot of criteria has to go in place for a missing person to technically be considered an Amber Alert. And so one thing that we found to be extremely useful is working with the local police department, the local fire department, and if somebody is missing and technically it can't be an Amber Alert, we can still utilize this technology to put that person's face up there. In my conversations with Mary, anything that has to do with any type of emergency information, missing person, what have you, is going to supersede that 1,200 exposures she's willing to give you each month. So if there was an Amber Alert, it does not affect the other time she's willing to give to the community. Any type of FBI alerts, it's interesting, we do actually see probably the greatest benefit with digital billboards with the FBI. We have located numerous convicts. One thing that's really interesting is it's often their family members turning them in. We do a lot with national security, any type of severe weather information, any type of tragic information, rerouting traffic, anything along those lines. We're absolutely happy to help you in any way that we can. My company will train anybody at your local police department, fire department directly on the software, and we can work with Mary to make sure that you have all the accessibility that you need. Here's just a picture of an Amber Alert that took place. A missing person alert. I think a really good example of the way a digital billboard has been utilized to serve the public was when the Minneapolis bridge collapse occurred. There was a lot of controversy over digital billboards when the bridge actually collapsed, and power had been cut to some of the digital billboards within the city surroundings of Minneapolis area and the Minnetonka area. Within 15 minutes of the Minneapolis bridge collapse occurring, there were emergency information up on the digital billboards. They turned the power back on up to all the digital billboards. They rerouted traffic, and they let people know what was going on. And since then, the power has been turned on, and people in Minneapolis I'm actually from Minneapolis, and people in Minneapolis have a pretty positive feedback from the actual bridge collapse. Just to recite this quote for the community, we've dedicated our digital network to Minnesota Department of Transportation to communicate traffic and safety information. We were live with an emergency message within 15 minutes of the bridge collapse, said Leanne Muller of Clear Channel Outdoor Minneapolis. Here's some other warning and information that we've done. So what exactly happens if the space isn't sold? You know, obviously Mary said she'll do the 1,200 exposures. Any other space that isn't sold, we're happy to provide any of that information or any of that space to, say, any new businesses that have come to town or to just provide a community benefit for you. Here's just some examples of some creative that's been put up on some digital billboards for community alerts. The federal government has approved digital billboards. They've done quite a few studies. Some of them have been sponsored by the industry, some of them have not been sponsored by the industry. But overall, the federal government has deemed digital billboards safe. The federal government has asked the states to abide by an 8-second hold time. The state of Massachusetts has chosen a 10-second hold time, so you actually have stricter levels than the federal government has asked for. Digital billboards are approved as a sign as well as in the manner in which they were being used. There are 3 major studies that have been done. A first Tantalus study, they said they wanted more research on that, so a second Tantalus study was done, and then a Virginia Tech study has been done. What questions do you have?
I have a question with the 1,200 exposures. Can you explain that, what an exposure is?
Sure, yep. An exposure is defined as one of those 10-second hold time slots. And so the billboard will have one ad on it, say it's the American Red Cross. It's gonna be there for 10 seconds, and in less than 1 second, it has to transition to the next 10-second ad. And so Mary Burns is willing to donate 1,200 of those to you as a community, as well as anything else so that isn't sold. So.
Okay. Now, Massachusetts has approved it. Does Massachusetts have to specifically approve this sign? And if so, do they have to do it before approvals for this board or after, or does it matter?
Massachusetts is actually a really unique state right now because Massachusetts is in the process of a pilot program. So permits are being sent out for a pilot program. They've put a timeline on the pilot program. Anything that needs to be done in April. I don't know the exact date in April. But typically, you need to get a local permit, and then people can put in their request for the permit at the state level.
And what's the criteria for the Massachusetts state level, do you know?
It's gonna be a 10-second hold time. It's I believe 3,000 linear feet from one digital display to the next.
What does that mean?
That means if say we're on Route 3 and
Yep.
we're going in the same direction, we can have a board, and 3,000 feet later, according to the state, we can have another digital
Distance
billboard.
between boards?
Exactly. Yep.
There's a chart, Mr. Chairman, in the big book here.
Yep.
Which also indicates the change time, which was inquired about recently. You'll note on that chart, which is on the left-hand side, that the longest change time in the country is 10 seconds, and that's what Massachusetts requires. I bring that up, and I'll comment on it a little bit later as well, because of the discussions we had with the city, DPD. There's a request on their part that this board consider 20, but I just wanted you to know the difference and make you aware of this chart so that you could see the comparisons.
Okay. Now, do some of these boards shut down? I've read some things that shut down from midnight till 5 or 6 in the morning, and do you have that capability from?
Yep, absolutely. The capability on the technology is similar to your laptop. You can essentially, your computer can go to sleep if you've been away from it for a certain amount of time. It's the same thought process within the digital technology. Within the software, we can blanket from, say, 1 a.m. to 4 a.m. We can blanket from midnight to 6:30 a.m. So the software is very flexible, and it's also something that you're not locked into forever. If you decide that you'd like to blanket from, 1 a.m. to 4 a.m., and then you decide, you know what, we don't feel like that's quite enough for our community, we'd rather do midnight to 5 a.m., it's very simple to go in and make any changes.
In your experience, what do most communities do?
It's typical right now, ironically, for most digital billboards that are in suburban areas to run 24/7, which is interesting because Times Square actually shuts down at 2 a.m. and starts back on about 6:30 a.m. And so in my professional opinion, I don't think it hurts it. I don't think it's gonna negatively impact Mary if it was turned off at 1 a.m. and it was turning back on at 5:30 or 6 a.m. But a lot of communities are allowing people to keep them on 24/7.
Mr. Chairman, question?
Go ahead, yeah, anybody jump in.
In regards to the Amber Alerts, FBI, those kinds of designs, are they standard and dictated by the federal government or by the state as far as the Amber Alert, as far as what physically would appear on the sign?
Yes.
Or is that something that would come under Mary's auspices and/or the city's?
Anything for the FBI or the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, the templates that you see come from those associations. And so we don't have any control, Mary doesn't have any control. That bypasses my company. We have no control over actually what is shown.
So the city would have no control over
No
it either.
control.
Those would have to be governed
Yep.
under the auspices of the FBI or the state, or the
Yep.
agencies that govern.
Now, if it was just a missing person from your local police department, or if it was a wanted sign from your local police department, you certainly have 100% of control over that.
But the Amber Alerts is something that's a template that would come up.
Yeah, the Amber Alerts are 100, Daktronics spent a lot of time and a lot of energy with the National Center, and so what we've done is they actually have access to our software, and it's so powerful that all they do is put in a zip code that they want to tap into, and everything shoots out to those zip codes automatically. They import a picture, and they type into a platform what the details are, and all of that is sent automatically, and what you see is actually that creative that's up on the one Amber Alert that we had up here. And that has since changed since I took this picture, but everything is mandated from them.
So that's something that's a template that came down, and that's something that would automatically be placed, and the city and/or Mary would have no jurisdiction over that?
Right.
Okay, just wanted to make sure of that.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. I guess this will be more addressed to the petitioner. So you're proposing a trade-off to the community of approximately 1,200 exposures a month.
Correct.
Now, may I ask, what would be the monetary value of that? Do you have any approximate idea?
I have to say, I don't know, but I would ask Barry. Let's put it this way, I'm just guessing 14,400 a year. I can't imagine, she can correct me if I'm wrong, that each one of these messages must be at least $1. So I think we're saying well over $14,000 would be I don't know, am I off, Mary? Or?
Substantially more than 14,000 a year.
So we would say a monetary value, of, if I may be so bold, 40 to 50,000 roughly, are we saying, Mary, approximately?
Could well be.
Thank you.
I just wanted to interpose a couple other things. Interestingly, the photo that I have put in your package, I have some concerns because, and I should have mentioned this before, I certainly intended. As you well know, it's our practice, and I have had discussions with the Department of Planning and Development about our proposal, and though they are not in favor of billboards as they have made previously known in the past, they're concerned about economic benefit to the city. Well, I think I also already mentioned a lot of that by way of new jobs, assists for businesses, promotion for all of these entities, et cetera, and values of in the tens of thousands. I think we can easily say tens of thousands of dollars as far as the message moments that Mary's going to make available. But I also want to mention two things. Number one, I'm aware and I have seen the proposed conditions that the city has filed with the board, and I also included some of my own in the back of the package. I think it's at the end of my statement for the board. I'd like to add one more to that, which I think I left out, which is that should the board see fit to approve our request for the special permit, Mary has indicated that she'd come back 6 months or a year from now to make sure that the board is comfortable with the content of her packages or things like that. I'm not particularly fond of some of the city requests that I think someone could easily say raises some First Amendment questions and maybe even some issues of censorship. I don't think the city or this board wants to get into the content that's other than maybe the items we mentioned in number 1 and 2, the adult business and the other stuff. So I tried to shy away from that, except to say that Mary's a responsible citizen. She knows that she's got to do the right thing for the city. That's what she wants to do. And so she's not going to let any bad content get on there. And that's why we're willing to come back for a review at a time that this board feels appropriate. I also think it's interesting, and I have to say, I don't know if any of you can identify the location of the picture that I put in the back of your folder. Yes, sir? You can.
Only because that road quite a bit on my way to Hampton Beach, so I know where that is.
That signboard is an LED signboard located on 495 in Lawrence, and the message that's on it, I can't show it, the message that's on it is, ironically, an ad for Lowell Memorial Auditorium. So we have a Lowell facility that's advertising on a message board, an LED message board in Lawrence. It just gives you an idea of what all the potential is to let people know about Lowell and all of the wonderful things we have in Lowell. Yes.
There are 2 conditions which came from the Division of Planning and Development that I see on here, which would not, I think, be applicable. One, they refer to the shimmering, fading, oscillating, rotating, scrolling, which, according to the presentation that you made, is not a technology that would be involved anyway, so that's not a condition. The other that I noticed, which is why I asked the particular question, says Amber Alert warnings or public safety's announcements will also be approved at the city's billboard content and design point person. Obviously, there isn't time, and as you just alluded to, that would be out of, again, the city's jurisdiction if it's an Amber Alert and or anything that's being governed by the federal government.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any opposition to shutting it down from, say, midnight to 6, except for emergency notifications?
So the
That's fine.
only thing that might be different from a technology standpoint is if we turn it off, it delays. For example, we would have to our network operations center would notice that an Amber Alert has been put into place, and somebody would have to manually go in and turn it back on. It's probably on average a delay of 15 to 20 minutes. And so that's the only concern with turning it off. I just want to be upfront about that.
So what would be?
If you did dim it, like say if you did dim it from midnight to 6,
Yeah.
and then Amber Alert came up at 2 a.m., there would be, instead of being immediately, it would be probably about a 15 to 20 minute lag time, just in order for that to actually hit.
Right.
So,
And I think that, probably from practical standpoint, the traffic on the road then is, at those hours, probably minimal anyway.
Probably
So to
not
get
massive,
any
yeah.
benefit from the
yeah. One other thing to bring up that I think is important, George was talking about the economic benefits, and I come in front of a lot of communities and I see a lot of different things, and one thing that I think that is really unique for this technology is that it allows a smaller business in town who typically can't afford to operate with a static billboard. Say, for example, a static billboard costs $5,000-$6,000 a month to rent out the space, but it would be an ideal location for somebody to put up an exit now or something along those lines. It really provides an opportunity for somebody to say, you know what, I'm a local deli owner, I really want to hit that evening rush, people on their way home from work. I can't afford $5,000, $6,000 a month to put up an exit here sign. But you know what, I can't afford $1,000 a month. And I only want to put my ad up from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m., Monday through Friday. This technology now now allows the opportunity for that independent business owner to advertise.
Okay.
By the way, Mr. Chairman, my client's response to your question was that she's willing to go through a dark period, but for what Kelly mentioned as a potential problem there.
Right, and I think that only issue would be that it just is a 15-minute delay.
Yeah, there's just a little bit of
So
delay.
the consequences are minimal because the traffic at that hour is probably minimal.
Yeah. And
know.
how is the traffic? Is it?
It's minimal at that
Okay.
time of night.
Right,
Okay.
it's, Route 3 is very quiet at that time.
Okay.
Is there an inherent cost, or is that something, in other words, they've gone dark? Does the petitioner incur additional fee to have someone come out and turn the system back on?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
I guess my concern now is that the span that you showed, the radius, on the streets beginning with Baltimore, and I think whatever, you can't see the billboard really for 8 months out of the year, or 7 months out of the year, but you can definitely see it this time of year. What you said earlier, it's going to be no different, in fact, probably less bright than
Yep.
the
So-
current, what's there right now?
Yeah, especially if you're referring to right here, it's such a wide angle, and the way LED technology works, as we're going this way, it's very directional focused. And the way the LEDs work, there's a shading mechanism around them, which essentially is for my purpose, for the manufacturer's purpose. But what that does is that limits our viewing angle at certain angles, which is why you see such a drastic change on your charts as you come out to the degrees. And so one of the benefits there is that as far as this whole area goes, you're really at a pretty low 0.003. I think this is 0.05, 0.005. As far as this whole portion of it is concerned, it's actually going to be dimmer statistically, mathematically, than what you have right now.
I think everything I've read, Mr. Chairman, indicates that these are actually less, they provide less spillage to the sides, and these things come out of like little cans directed towards the goal, which is the highway in this case.
Right. One thing that you could do also at that 6-month period when Mary comes back is you could reevaluate the brightness, because the technology has the ability to dim down a little bit if you would like that to happen. And so something that we could say is that, you know, when the 6 months comes, if, go ahead.
I think the brightness issue would be something that is, and I think this is what the chairman was alluding to when he talked about going dark for a period, and I'm not yet 100% convinced I agree with the chairman on going dark, but I think his concern is of the neighbors and the impact it has in a home that's facing the billboard, and it's 2 o'clock in the morning, the brightness coming into a home. In the daytime, it's going to be less intrusive, obviously, because they're probably not going to be home, and you have all the additional ambient light. And I think that's probably the point that the chairman is alluding to. And the concerns we would have is, although you say it's dimmer, I don't know if I had a home and I had a large picture window and we're facing it, and it was 2 o'clock in the morning, I'd probably want to see it before I could make an assessment.
Sure.
That being said, I'm a big proponent of the technology, and certainly whatever value it can bring to the city and to the public safety. But I think the chairman's point is well taken as far as those that were originally in opposition to the petition. I think their concerns probably alluded to that particular time frame and at 2 o'clock in the morning. And certainly if the petitioner is willing to consent and address those issues, I think that's something to be commended.
Yeah, and if that is a big concern within the technology, you know, we could find a certain time of the day where we can dim it down even a little bit more. So if you wanted to say midnight, it needs to come down even further until the 6 a.m. point. The technology has the ability to do that.
Yeah, no, my concern really is only that neighborhood, and it's only a small neighborhood there that it reaches, but you know, it's still, it's their neighbors, they're residents of Lowell, and,
Yeah.
and I can definitely, you know, they did oppose this, and they had some good reasons, but, you know, the petition prevailed originally, and now we're talking about not even several months later, but another petition, so I guess that's my concern, on top of, you know, whatever economic benefit the city may derive from this. So if it's, I guess my question, if this is to Mary, if you stand to lose revenues of, say, anywhere between $10,000 and $40,000 a year by giving the city these $1,200 spots, if it's closer to the 40, wouldn't an agreement of maybe, you know, offering the city $25,000 a year be more beneficial to you? Because you could then sell those spots for a great amount of money?
Well, at this point, first of all, I'm not Clear Channel, and I can't guarantee the city any amount of income that right now isn't there. If this wants to be reevaluated in a year, we can do that. But at this point, I cannot commit to any sum of money other than advertising space. This is a $500,000 project that's going to be going into this sign. So I have to think about the bank, the landlord, taxes paid to the city, donations, things like that.
Okay, what if the amount of spots was up from, say, 1,200 to 1,500, and the city could then sublet those spots, somehow go through you? So if the city, for instance, had the Lowell Memorial Auditorium, you know, different restaurants within the city, any venues that they have going on, that they could then sell those to those businesses, or either, like Attorney Leidy said, as an incentive to new businesses, or maybe at a reduced price to get these businesses active and promote economic development within the city. Would they be able, is there a mechanism that they would be able to charge these people money, the city can collect the revenues, and it can be coordinated through you? Because the city would have no standing really to control the board, or maybe not even legally to enter into a contract with anybody. So how would we tie up those loose ends?
I think such a thing could be done, if I could answer for Mary.
Sure.
The only thing I guess we'd be afraid of is we don't want the city competing with Mary either, so.
That's another thought, yeah.
Yeah, so, but she'd be more, I spoke to her about that concept, and she'd be more than willing to meet with city representatives to make sure that that's handled in a proper way, and that if they either, as I said, gave them to prospective businesses as a lure, gave it to other businesses who were doing positive things for the city, I think that would be wonderful. What I would suggest maybe, Mr. Chairman, is that we go forward. Would you go with the 1,500, Mary?
I can do
hate to ask you.
1,500.
Okay, I did have that. I did have a discussion with her about the possibility of increasing it to a number like 1,500, Mr. Chairman. And we could, for example, agree that we would, I wouldn't want to say it right now. If you notice in my proposed conditions, I indicate that we ought not to impose some of these conditions or reviews until after assuming that we get our special permit sign go up, because it doesn't do any good to say today, 30 days from now, 60 days from now,
Right.
because we probably practically won't get that sign up for some time. We still have to do the financing, we still have to engage the company, et cetera, but perhaps we can set up, I would propose a mechanism whereby we would agree to meet with city representatives to make sure that the 1,500 that Mary's now offered would be, shall we say, portioned out in a fair manner, in a manner that they feel is acceptable to the city as well. And if it doesn't work, or if there's a problem, we'll come back here. I do want to make one other remark, however, that I was a little concerned because there were some indications at other times about the possibility of Mary putting money forth into this. And I think that when we start getting into the idea of having new businesses pay money to the city to engage in whatever that activity is, I think we're headed down a slippery slope. And so it bothers me a little. It bothered a number of people that I spoke to about it. And I think that's something that, you know, what, the idea of giving these message times to the city, that's the perfect situation, because what it's really saying is, we're all working together to promote the city. So,
I don't really disagree, but I think, you know, to be fair to the DPD and the folks that work on the signs down there, I think that the indication was that other towns, I think if I'm reading this right, they said there's no other municipality in the state of Massachusetts that doesn't gift a certain amount of money to, I'm not sure if that's the case, I just want to
No,
read
that's
it.
absolutely not accurate, Mr. Chairman. And the other item that I want to point out, because I did see that mentioned in their memo, a couple of things. I think it's the classic apples and oranges, and also they're stating information for this board to consider that doesn't give the whole story. We don't know, for example, what the situation was in Stoneham. I do know this. Stoneham is Route 93. Interstate 93 carries, I don't know what the number is, but I'd venture to say at least 250,000 cars a day, as opposed to 100,000 cars a day, which Route 3 does. So that, and I'm not a specialist on advertising, but I know that if I'm telling somebody I'm getting 250,000 motorists as opposed to 100,000 motorists, then there's a lot more value. And with all due respect, I have a feeling that those people who are closer to Boston are a lot wealthier or higher income people than we here in Lowell and Greater Lowell are. So they're going to be targeted at a much greater number and rate. And again, see, what we're talking about here is we're getting into things, none of which we know of as far as that's concerned. The other item they mentioned was Tingsboro, and again, I don't know perfectly the case, but I understand that in the Tingsboro situation, the person who was proposing to put the sign up also, as part of the deal, got access to some other property that otherwise was not available for the town. Those are all different items. It seems to me, and this is just one man's opinion, that if we're going to get into charging a business for a situation like this, which is essentially what we're talking about, that this should be something that the city council should be looking at. I know they're going to be looking at the new sign proposal that's come before you, that's going to deal with how to handle signs, and I think billboards are part of that as well. I think if the city council, I'm not even sure of the authority of this board or any other board without legislation of some kind to impose fees. And I know, Mr. Chairman, you're not asking for an imposition. You're asking for what benefit. You're asking for me to show what benefits the city is going to derive. But it just seems to me, I'll go back to the slippery slope. You know, I'll quote Mrs. Eliades, who's out in TV land now, who said to me that if she were a businesswoman starting her new business and a similar proposition was made to her, she'd be quite upset.
Right, but I think just to clarify my point, it's not like businesses that come into the city, we're asking businesses to offer us money to do business in the city. It's not, you know, blatant extortion like that. I think I compare it to Lowe's. Lowe's comes in, it's a well-heeled, multi-billion-dollar company, and they come in and we impose, you know, 30 or 40 conditions on them that they have to spend $150,000 because they're coming in to do business here. They're asking for relief, and we're saying, well, the neighborhood and the city has to benefit as well. And I compare it to something like that. So, and I understand you can't compare Lowell to Stoneham, and you can't really compare Tingsboro to Lowell either. So I definitely understand what you're talking about. But I think the point is that the benefit to the city, you know, needs to be established. And I think it's significant relief that the applicant is asking for, not only originally, but again, it's significant relief. And there are neighbors in that area, and you know, there's not a lot, and it probably wouldn't have been approved in the first place if there were a very heavy neighborhood down there that it affects. But there is a neighborhood down there that affects, and if I could control it, I'd want whatever benefit the city gets to benefit that specific neighborhood, and I know that we probably can't be that specific, and that has nothing to do with the applicant. But maybe this is a good time. I think there is, Rachel is here from the sign department. If maybe we could get her input and see if we can reach some common ground.
Mr. Chairman?
Sure, go
Just an observation before she speaks.
Yep.
The consideration that I look here as someone who's in business, one would be, in literal terms, and counsel for petitioner address the differences in exposure that a sign may get in a particular community. That has to be something that's given consideration. What standard is used? If that's going to be the case and there's going to be a dollar amount assigned. And the other, I think, would be the consideration of the company itself. Because of my prior experience in the entertainment industry, I can tell you that the petition is competing with one of the largest companies in the world, which is a company called Clear Channel, which probably owns 98% of every billboard in the country. And that particular company can afford probably to give some of those remunerations, whereas we're looking at someone who is smaller in size, a business, who is from the area and has extended an overture. So I'd be concerned about how it's evaluated and what structure is going to be used, considerations in kind for someone of the size of Splash Media. That would be my comment. Thank you.
Okay, and that's a good point. That reminds me too, a question I had. What if this is sold to Clear Channel or somebody like that, I know part of the city, they have an issue with the existing billboards in the city that are basically need to come down, and kind of a trade-off in other communities we'll allow you to put this state-of-the-art billboard up, but take 60 down that have been deteriorating for the last 50 years. So I guess my question is, what happens in 3, 4, 5 years if Mary sells this to Clear Channel or some, large company like that, and we have no control over them? So, we have a local applicant that then becomes a huge business in the country that is now buys her out, and they assume the restrictions that, in my opinion, are going to be minor that we put on Mary compared to what we'd do if it were Clear Channel in front of us. So I guess that's another concern I have.
I guess my response would be twofold. It's that's almost like a good news, bad news for the city. If it were Clear Channel and they took over and then they wanted to do something else, then they could go to them, and just as they have suggested in the letter here to you about the things for the applicant or the conditions, it's a lot easier to go to Clear Channel and say, Clear Channel, you've got, I don't even know, 70, 100, 200 billboards around Lowell. We want you to take these 5 or 6 down. So if they're the owner, it's going to be a lot easier to negotiate that kind of a deal. But to that issue, I have discussed that with Barry. Obviously, first of all, she has no intent or a desire to sell to anybody else. But even if the proverbial offer she couldn't refuse came along, my understanding is that you would be putting conditions on this applicant and this owner, and I believe that the onus would be upon any purchaser to come back to this board and get permission to continue on as the owner-operator of that board.
I guess that could be a further condition.
Right.
It's not
Or to
automatic.
get conveyed, Mr. Chairman, it will need this board's approval.
I don't know if we have that authority though, right? I mean, if we can't, she could sell anything she wants, but they can, we can't stop the conveyance, but we may be able to stop the operation of it without further approval from this board. So, it would be a matter of wording. Okay, sorry, Rachel, if you want to jump in.
Hi. Good evening. My name is Rachel Kisker, and I am a design planner with the City of Lowell Division of Planning and Development. And we wrote the memo that the board and other members in the room have to express the overreaching point we'd like to make is that, and I know you're aware of this, so I don't mean to speak for you, but the importance of this situation, how it will affect the landscape as we know it, how it will affect the potential image of Lowell itself. We made the point in the memo that the master plan that was developed cited that specifically that the gateways to Lowell, the image of at the gateways are very important, and we think that this type of billboard could perhaps aesthetically, alter the gateway appearance. And when you talk about 100,000 cars going by this billboard every day, of course, most of the information will be wonderful, folk festival, Winterfest, but some of those people might not appreciate the aesthetics of a digital billboard. They might think it's too bright. Of course, we can adjust these things, and I understand that the technology is very specific, and that's good as well, but we're wondering, how will this affect the image of Lowell as a whole, especially that a lot of these people that are going by the billboard don't maybe know the city intimately, and this might be their only impression, their only visual impression of Lowell will be this billboard. The other thing that we noted in the memo is that the studies that have been done on safety really go both ways. If you do some research, I know there are many studies that show that digital billboards are not a safety concern, but you can find, like anything, you can find information that says just the opposite and reaches different conclusions. I know that one fact I read is that taking your eyes away from the road for just 2 seconds can cause an accident. There was a study done in Wisconsin, I think, where after a digital billboard was installed, certain types of accidents increased 35%. So I'm just saying, all of that can be looked at from different directions depending on kind of what your standpoint is. We cited the Tingsboro and Stoneham, as everybody has just mentioned, because it's knowledge, it's information that's out there, it's all over the internet, and these are, other communities in Massachusetts that we were just trying to learn from, and to ignore the fact that they made agreements that included gifts, it was something that we just chose, felt that it was irresponsible to totally ignore it. Of course, there are factors that are different in every single case, and we're not saying we're exactly like Stoneham or Tingsboro. We were just putting that information out there, and, it's public information that's online. We also mentioned that Springfield denied a special permit for a billboard on I-91. Springfield, I would imagine, could also use business to be brought to their city. They could also use the benefit of public announcements. They could use probably many of the same things we're looking to gain for our city, yet they chose, and again, the reasons are probably numerous and don't all line up with the goals of Lowell, but they chose to deny a special permit, and we also noted that Concord, New Hampshire, although it's a different state, completely bans digital billboards. So what we were trying to express in the totality of the memo is how important and difficult a decision like this is to make, and that many, many cities and towns all across the country are struggling with this exact debate. I just read something online today that Los Angeles, California, just decided to, although they have digital billboards in their city, have decided to start banning digital billboards. So, a city like Los Angeles, you'd think that's a perfect place for such technology, and they're struggling with it. So what we were trying to point out is that the facts are numerous, the information is numerous, it's a new technology, and we just wanted to point out all of the different things that come into play, and that we would just urge the board to, consider all of these things before making a decision.
Okay, and do you see that the city can actually derive a benefit from 1,500 spots per month at 10 seconds? I mean, I know
Yeah.
that's probably not your department so much as the...
We've spoken with other people in the city who it is their department, LZ. Just briefly, you know that George Proikis just recently left the city of Lowell. I know that he had some conversations with the different departments that do promotions of events, and they did see some value in it. How you can measure that and how we would proceed with that, it's not my area of expertise, but I know that it's certainly interesting to other folks in the city. We're coming at it from a different standpoint, obviously, but we understand that promoting the city's events is important and valuable.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If I may,
Sure.
with all due respect to the department, the opening part of the presentation addressed the master plan and the aesthetics. Mm-hmm. Does a dollar amount reduce the aesthetic impact or the value of the master plan?
No, I think the first line, we recommend not to not for the board to approve the conversion of an existing billboard to a digital style. What we were trying to do is weigh the pros and cons that, in the end, perhaps would be a net, benefit for the city.
Okay,
that make
that's the one problem I have
Yeah.
with the memo. The way I read the memo, and in all respect to the individuals who composed it, I think I may have put the references to the communities, Kingsborough, and then before that paragraph that mentions the benefits must outweigh the quality of life impacts, which basically means that apparently we're putting a dollar value on the life impacts, and that bothers me. Either the sign is going to have a benefit to the community and the area, or it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how you put a literal dollar value on it, and that's the problem I have, with all due respect to the department, and I certainly appreciate all the tremendous work that they do on behalf of this board and for the city, but I'm only one voice, and I'm just trying to offer my position on it. Thank you.
Okay, and just to clear that up too, I think that what we had said, what we had asked Rachel as the new sign planner to come in, rather than, in the past, we would get memorandums in, one line saying that we vote to, our position is to deny the board and for a standard reason. And maybe this memo is a little bit long, because I think we have asked them that in the event that you don't support it, which they didn't, and they laid that out, to give us some criteria we can use if we're inclined to support it. So the first thing is, we don't want it from DPD's perspective. But second of all, if you're going to improve it, these are the things we'd like to see in it. So that may have been like the crossover for that, and I'm not sure, but I know that I was.
I agree with that.
And I feel like I'm responsible for that, because I kept, advocating that we get some, alternative
Right.
suggestions other than just a denial. Something where, if we're going to approve it, at least tell us what's the next best thing
Yes.
from the city's perspective, because oftentimes we don't have anybody here. In fact, I think this is the first time we've had somebody here from the sign department, which is very helpful,
So I'm
by the way.
trying.
Which is helpful,
trying
because
to
we don't get to have that
Participate and be
exchange.
helpful, right.
So,
And I think you're exactly right, and thank you for, I didn't want to speak for you, but that was the goal. I think in a memo that I read that was before I even joined the city, that was written when this petition came up the first time around, I think it was more specifically expressed in a term such that was, and again, I'm just going from memory, if you had revenue, or you had the opportunity to build a park, let's say. You put up the billboard, which you're looking at as a negative aesthetically and maybe otherwise, but then you would have an opportunity to focus on another part of the master plan, like building a park. I think it was again, weighing the pros and cons and trying to make a trade-off. And like the chairman said, we were trying to suggest options rather than just saying a blanket no, a two-sentence memo. So, but thank you. I
And when you-
appreciate it.
when
Thank you, I appreciate you coming, I hope you keep coming back. Thanks.
when you met with Attorney Lighties and Mary and the folks, did you have the opportunity of this presentation?
We didn't have it at that time, correct, George? But we did, I did receive it and have a chance to look at it
Okay, because
today.
a lot of my questions that I have written down were already answered in the presentation. So I think that if you didn't get the benefit of that prior to this letter, that may have been something too.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
I got the
Mr. Chairman,
presentation.
may I go?
I got the presentation today.
Corey?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like
Can
I'd
I
like to-
throw in 2 cents worth, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
It was good working with Rachel and her boss and the people at DPD, and we had a good dialogue, and it worked well, and I commend them and the administration for trying to find what's in the best interest for the city. I think it's a good idea, and I think we had a good exchange with a bunch of those things.
Good, okay. Corey?
Yes, I would like to make a comment, Mr. Chairman, regarding kind of sort of echoing Mr. Knox's comments of, how difficult a decision this is, as well as yours, Rachel. I mean, the whole nation's struggling with, it is new technology, and there are positives and there are negatives. But we at this board, we're here to see a trade-off back to the community, and Mary Burns is certainly willing to do that. But it's difficult to put a monetary value at this time on a gift to the city, say, when she has no income at this time. We don't know how this thing is going to do. And not to mention, she has hurdles, she needs state approval, she has financing, so she has a few hurdles in store for herself at the same time. So, Mr. Chairman, I don't know if this is out of our jurisdiction. If this were to get approved, You know, the first year, except the 1,500 10-second flashes, we'll say, and is it possible to come back in a year from state approval and renegotiate, I ask? Thank you.
I think what maybe we could do is the same thing Rick had suggested on the previous petition, maybe do a 6-month review after the board first lights up. 6 months and then a year, so we schedule them both at the same time. And I guess maybe to emphasize it, one of the reasons for the review is to check on the glare, the impact on the neighborhood, and whether or not the 1,500 spots is a sufficient economic exchange for the variance. Question is, what happens if the board hopefully is, hugely successful, and then, we're looking for 2,500, and then we've got, a give and take where she's already got the board up, and do we have the power to stop the board if we don't come to an agreement?
Then we're in a stick-up position, I guess,
Right, yeah,
Mr. Chairman.
and I don't want to put you in that position.
I'd like to think that this board would never put us in that position.
I'm just trying to think of the worst. This board may not always be what you're looking at right now, too, so it could be. Rick, did you have anything?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chairman, to Rachel. Rachel, how far along are we with this new sign ordinance?
Excuse me. Yes, I thought that might come up tonight, and we have a draft that we're working with, and it is something that we discussed with Mr. Geary before George Proakis left on Friday. We are working on it. I can't give you a time, exact time measurement, especially that I'm coming on to this late in the game, but it's the top priority for our department to push this along and get it to a point that is ready for your complete, review, and then hopefully get it into the channels that it needs to become official.
Would you say by July, August?
I think that sounds reasonable, yes, from the sense I got from George before he, when he was transferring all the information to me, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
The only comment I have, Mr. Chairman, I kind of echo the same as Mr. Knox, but we do have to work together as a city on, I think if we can get together as a group and either have them go back to DPD and wait to see what we have for a new sign ordinance coming out, maybe this will help us make a decision that will allow us to have these signs within the city or certain areas where billboards are allowed, instead of, kind of rushing through this, that we are in the midst of a zoning change or a sign change, and work it together, not to, jump into this and possibly have a mistake, where the city can learn from everybody here, from the sign companies, from Rachel, Mr. Leidy's, and Mary Burns, and work it out. That's my opinion, that we should work together as a group and maybe see if we can sit down and hammer this out so it works for everybody, including the city.
With all due respect, we put in our application under the rules of the game. And I understand on the one hand what Mr. Bienvenu is saying, there are changes taking place. But first of all, we don't even know if those changes are going to take place. Secondly, we don't know what, if any, effect it's going to have on us. To tell us to wait for all of that to get done in the city would be a truly unfair proposition for my client, and to then make her also come back and reapply all over again. I mean, the fact of the matter is we have a good, solid application here under the rules as they currently exist, and I think we're entitled to the consideration on that. We're willing to bend, and when I say bend, we're willing to do the kinds of things that you indicated, Mr. Chairman, and that Mr. Bienvenu said we ought to do for one of the other ones. We'll come back in 6 months, we'll come back in a year, and we'll take our chances on that, because we think, believe me when I tell you this, when I see this happening, this is the information of the future. People talk about going by, with all due respect to Rachel and the people at DPD, that is this the view we want to give people of the city of Lowell? Drive down Route 3 from Chelmsford and drive by Lowell and tell me anything on that road that says, come into Lowell. If I'm from Montreal and I'm coming down, all I'm seeing is Lowell 10 miles ahead, Lowell turn right here, absolutely no information about what the heck Lowell is. This is the future, Mr. Chairman, and I say now's the time.
Okay. All right, does anybody here wish, any other comments from the board before I open up the public? Bill?
I don't know, it's like information overload at this point, but, what happens with the state, Mr. Alides, after it moves from here? What do you have to do with the state?
I'll defer to Mary, because she's the expert on that subject.
Once if I get approval from this board tonight, I then have to proceed with an application and permit request to the State Outdoor Advertising Division. And they will either take this application and approve it or deny it.
So are there any high-level criteria that they're looking at, or what are they focusing on?
I will be required to do a traffic study of the traffic on Route 3 and Route 110, to make sure that it's a safe location. And I also have to make sure that it complies with the state and the federal outdoor advertising laws. And those are extensive and much more extensive than anything this city could ever put forth.
Right. So you submit a traffic study to them, or do they kind of conduct their own traffic study?
I have to pay for it and submit it to the state.
So is safety one of those things that come out of the traffic study?
Safety is the first and foremost criteria for a state permit.
Okay. Now, it seems like there's been an awful lot of information in the last, I don't know how many minutes, but, I think there's a lot of concerns, but I think there's a lot of opportunity. I think you have a person that wants to invest, again, some money in the city, and I almost look at it as another startup. And some of the money that Mary's explained that she's going to invest, or investors on this, seems pretty significant. And I think there's benefits for everybody. Mr. Chairman, so are we making a decision on this tonight, or is there any other information we're missing?
No, I believe we're making a final decision on it tonight. Now, what I'm trying to do is write down some of the conditions that we discussed, because I think there were,
Right.
4 or 5 of them, and I haven't opened up to the public yet, the meetings.
So, okay, I'll just be quick then. So the letter we received from the city, and I think Attorney Alides talked about this, here we go. The list of restrictions here, are you agreeing to every single one of these restrictions, or is there some modification on? Okay.
I'm agreeing to 1 and 2,
Yep.
and the rest of them, I'm putting in my version of them, because I'm quite concerned, as I said, about the censorship and First Amendment aspects of some of the other parts.
I'll leave that to the chairman to explain that.
We haven't gone over that yet, but I want to hear if there's anybody from the public, because it's getting a little bit late. Anybody here wishing to speak in favor of this petition? In favor? One at a time. Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members of the Zoning Board of Appeals, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mark Goldman, 58 Oakland Street, Lowell, Mass. And I wish to be recorded in favor of this. In my opinion, this is a win-win situation. I believe that the only people that are going to be paying any attention and really noticing things on a billboard like this are going to be people that are driving by on the highway. And we want people who are from out of town and out of state to come to Lowell. We're a National Historic Park city. We're a Heritage State Park city. We're an all-American city. And we have so much. We have the Folk Festival. We have the Winter Festival. We have so much art galleries and museums and everything that's happening in this city. And we should be proud of it, and we are proud of it because we were born here. And I think that people will come and to visit the city, to visit the downtown, to visit the stores, the restaurants, and it will boost the economy of the city. And I think this is a win situation, and I think whatever conditions that you put on reasonable conditions will be met by these people. I've known Mary for many, many years, and I trust her, and I trust Attorney Alides, keeping their word. And I 99% agree with things from the DPD, but I do have some reservations about some of the things that have been mentioned. But I think that in all aspects, everybody can win in this situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Anybody else wish to speak in favor? In favor?
Hi, my name is Rodney Fisher, and I know I'm on the agenda also, but I know Mary very well and George, and actually I'm in support of that too, because actually if you looked out the window, you could probably see my truck out there, and I have a smaller version of that digital, which actually can pretty much do the same thing as control, and I can just tell you from the advertisement of that, I generated a lot of business, and I live in Lowell, and I enjoy and appreciate Lowell, and I help probably a good percentage of the small businesses in here, in Lowell, from, you know, as far as being here, because I know I've been here several times, the board, and I'm down in the building department quite frequently for a lot of them, and helping them get their small business started. And I think what she's saying is probably one of the most things that right now that Lowell really truly does need and stuff, especially for the small businesses. They have some other means of them being able to let people know that there's businesses here in Lowell. And I understand Lowe's and Target just moved in, and those are big corporations and stuff, and I know her heart where it's from, because I see her all the time in other different businesses, not only what she does, but I know because she keeps the money and she supports the other small businesses that are in here. And I know that Lowell is predominantly small businesses, and I think that, and I know that's where her heart's at. And that's part of the intention, that's what's behind her thing to offer, to keep the businesses that are in Lowell striving, even in the way this economy is. Because I know there's several of them right now that are struggling, that I'm actually even assisting them to stay in business, you know, because they don't know where to go get the resources from. But I believe in that Lowell offers them resources, and I think as us collectively, and not trying to find things to say why we can't do this and why can't we do that, or why can't we keep up with the times and, you know, the way innovation is and stuff, because, and I respect what Rachel said also too in her position, but, you know, everything that we have available to us today, there's some issue of yes or no. Just like the cell phone, people texting while they're driving. You know, I remember when they had the big thing about saccharin and all of the other stuff. But, you know, for something that's helping this community, which I think should be the forefront of all of our minds, I think you guys should approve her to have the opportunity. As a matter of fact, on top of the 1,500 spots she's going to let you have, I like to take one of those spots now, so I'm giving her my card.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else wish to speak in favor of this petition? And hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Anybody here wish to speak in opposition? This petition in opposition? And hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. So I think the conditions that we've discussed so far, and anybody can jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, Attorney Leidy, a 6-month and a 1-year review date to revisit the issue of the impact on the neighborhood and the benefit to the city. And if the business is sold or any change of ownership, they have to come before the board for new permits or approvals. And the city to be offered 1,500 10-second exposures per month to be used in the best way the city deems reasonable and fair, and the applicant agrees to work with the city to coordinate the same. And 4, that the billboard shall be dim from 12 a.m. until 6 a.m. daily. And then I think the other, Attorney Elides, I did see the, and I guess we all saw the proposed conditions, additional conditions by the city that are somewhat mirrored in Attorney Elides' proposal. 1 and 2, he agrees with, which basically says the billboard will not be used for any advertisement of adult establishments such as bookstores, adult motion pictures, adult mini motion pictures, theaters, adult live entertainment establishments, adult video stores, and massage service establishments, and the like. And the billboard will not be used for the advertisement of any body art establishments. And then I agree, when we're getting into guns and ammunitions, maybe we are getting into some First Amendment issues, so,
I have some others that were...
although I'm not sure that's any different from 1 and 2, but,
Right. I agree. I was a little leery myself about those, Mr. Chairman, but...
but I, whether it's a violation or not, I agree that if we approve this and there's messages up there for adult entertainment, it's you know, not gonna be something, that, it's not something that I think any of us, well, at least I don't feel comfortable approving.
Go ahead. Mary wants to say.
I will guarantee you there'll be no adult anything up there, adult
Okay. entertainment
entertainment of any type, or massage parlors or tattoo parlors.
With or without a condition.
So
I'm the landowner, and I also control the power. And
The electric power is
there's not going to be any offensive.
Sit down.
I guess what we could do to maybe save a lot of these is, for 1, 2, and 3, we can put in that the applicant or her agents or representatives shall not allow any inappropriate advertisements. I mean, that kind of is a catch-all, and that we don't get in any trouble doing that. So maybe
I think so, and that's why I said, and I'm trying to see which one. At the end of my last submission, I gave you a document entitled Suggested Conditions Restrictions.
Yeah, I'm looking at that right now.
Mr. Chairman, what body is going to deem it
I think we
inappropriate?
would certainly agree to a review, I mean, a reasonable review. I don't think we need to put together a board or a body to decide whether or not, to use a pun, a particular ad is too bawdy, B-A-W-D-Y. But we certainly, I have the greatest confidence in the world that we're going to have nothing but first-class, proper advertising.
I mean, we can also say the board, or the building department can call the petitioner before the board of
Sure.
any, allegations of.
You do have that power,
Right,
Mr.
so that
Chairman,
will
as
get
you
us.
know. Right.
Okay. I think number 4, the petitioner agrees to constantly monitor and adjust as necessary the brightness of displays, and further, as required by ZBA, if such matter cannot be adjusted to reasonable satisfaction of any legitimate complaints. I agree with that. Number 5, should the city decide to accept the applicant's offer of free messages, the applicant will agree to establish a process, including an appointment of a designated representative spokesperson for the parties, and provide the city with graphic design assistance in preparing such messages for display at no cost to the city. I think
I
that's a
forgot
good.
to mention that, if I can interrupt.
Yep.
Not only the 1,500 messages, but Mary will provide all the graphics work, which is no cheap expense, to put them together so they go up on the board.
Okay, and displays I guess we talked about staying consistent with state regs, where the displays will not change any more often than 10 seconds, or whatever the current state standard is, and shall be static, non-video, or streaming, and will not flash, blink, simulate movement, or give the illusion of any movement, or be displayed in a fashion tended to be unreasonably, unsafely distracting to passing motorists. I think that does address a lot of the concerns for the city that they had, and kind of a catch-all condition. And number 7, the applicant petitioner shall appear before the ZBA at its first regularly scheduled meeting held after the 90 days following the completion of its LED installation for the first initial business use of the same applicant, to review status of brightness levels and their effect on the surrounding areas. I think if we do it 6 months and a year now, after 90 days, we may not get enough feedback.
Right.
And 6 months goes by fast, so, I think that's something that would be acceptable. So I guess to sum it up, if we take your 1 and 2, and instead of say same as the city, we just say the applicant will not allow any inappropriate ads to go on the board. And then we follow you down 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then whatever I brought up in the beginning, the 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Correct.
And if everybody has any other suggestions?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Bill.
just 2 quick things. First one is, you're saying nothing between 12 and 6. Does that mean there's nothing at all?
Right, it's dimmed down, right?
Except the Amber Alerts, which were mandated.
I'm sorry?
I think the Amber Alerts are mandated once we're
Right, I
in
heard
the service.
that, but there's nothing at all. It'll be just blank.
Yeah, and then the only other thing you might want to consider also with the Amber Alerts and the FBI is if your local police department has any emergency information that they want to put up, that's an exception as well.
Right. And did you say something about, as I was asking about state approval, is that part of your conditions, or does that have nothing to do with ours?
Right, obviously you can't put this up without, regardless of local approval, you can't
Correct, I
you
think-
can't light it up without state approval.
I thought I heard that as one of your earlier
Yep.
conditions,
Right.
but obviously we
so-
understand that.
So we'll put, that's the first one, state approval, and then we'll start with the 6 months, 1 year.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, the 6 months commencing from the time it's turned on?
From the time it's turned on, I think that only makes sense, because what if there's a delay and 6 months goes by and they haven't even, and I know it took a while to get going in the first place.
On that other issue between 12 and 6, maybe you want to encompass the phrase of anything related to public safety, such as fire, police?
Right, 12 and 6, except for emergency notifications. All right? So I guess what we could do is we could read in these conditions, but if you wanted to send what you think, what your understanding of the conditions are to Kim, and before I sign it, I'll make sure they're consistent with what we agreed tonight, just because it's getting a little complicated.
That's fine with
Hey,
me,
Bezza?
Mr. Chairman.
Yep, okay. So you're number 7, we're adopting, but we're cutting out the 90 days because that was already
The
brought up.
6 months and a year, correct.
So maybe since I have it all in front of me, do you want me to read, you want to make the motion and with the following conditions, and I'll read the conditions?
Sure. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve with the following conditions.
The conditions are, number 1, that the applicant obtain state approvals prior to starting.
First, we need a second on
business.
that motion.
No, I'm sorry.
I second it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Noon.
The first one is the applicant have obtained state approvals. Second one is that the applicant appear before the board at a 6-month and 1-year interval from the time the building first is operational to address and revisit the issues of the impact on the neighborhood and the benefit to the city. And number 3, and if the business is sold or there's any change in ownership, that the new entity come before this board for all approvals. And the 4th, that the city is offered 1,500 10-second exposures per month to be used in the best way that the city deems reasonable, and the applicant agrees to work with the city to coordinate the same as suggested in the conditions handed in by Attorney Alides. And number 4, the billboard shall be dimmed from the hours of 12 a.m. until 6 a.m. daily, with the exception of emergency notifications. And then we're also going to adopt Attorney Alides' suggested conditions, except as 1 and 2, we're going to read that the applicant will not allow any inappropriate advertisements. And then we'll begin 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, as stated by Attorney Alides, with the exception of number 7, deleting the 90 days to make it consistent with number 2 condition with the 6-month and the year review.
I agree, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we need a vote. Roll call, please.
Okay, Mr. Bailey.
Motion needs to be seconded.
Mr. Noon already did that.
Didn't hear it, thank you.
Mr. Bailey.
Approve with conditions.
I vote to approve with conditions. Mr. Geary.
Approve with conditions?
Mr. Knox.
Approve with conditions.
Mr. Noon.
Approve with condition.
Okay, you've been unanimously approved with the conditions discussed, so Attorney Alides, if you could just sign one of these documents, and good luck to you.
Would it be appropriate, Mr. Chairman, if I said the first board will have a picture of the zoning board on it?
As long as you take my picture out of it, you can. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for your help. Thanks for your help, we sure appreciate it.
Okay, we're just going to take a 3-minute recess for everybody and start, we're going to start almost right away.
You know what you're doing, Walter? I think I've got to get it started.
Is this gonna be okay, though?
That's a lot faster than getting it up. It was nice to meet you. I'm
Pleasure meeting you.
Thanks for all your help. We sure appreciate
I'm
it.
the building commissioner. Did you put that cord back there?
Hey, look, I can take it off now, it's working. No, I'm showing everybody, I'm showing everybody. Planning development just got actually fixed. Tanks and more, Jeff.
I want to get up quick because it's...
Where's George?
I believe it is.
It's actually going to be cheaper to run.
They had a vote.
Oh, I think I'm good. Thank you for your help. I sure appreciate it.
Good. Yeah, Josh, we can talk tomorrow for that meeting. But,
Thank you, Corey.
good luck with it. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
It's better. No, it's better. It's been broken Thursday.
Got over the hump.
Yeah, broken Thursday.
It's good.
Take that off.
Yeah, I can take. I said, yeah, I can take it. I can take it off. I can move it around. But then after you move it around, the whole structure starts to throb. So.
That was great. Okay, Ricky.
Okay, folks, can we have your attention? We're about to begin here. Makes two of us.
Yes, I am. Okay, the zoning board of appeal reconvened. The next order of business is CB 2009-58, special permit telecommunications, T-Mobile Northeast LLC. The petition is located at 295 Barnum Ave. Could I have the petitioners please present their case?
Good evening, Karen Simeo, McDermott, Quilty, and Miller, here on behalf of T-Mobile. I have with me Mr. Matthew McQuaid, who is site acquisition specialist for T-Mobile, as well as Mr. Scott Heffernan, who is the RF radio frequency engineer and familiar with this particular site and helped in terms of the coverage necessary to satisfy the network gaps and the reason we're here for this site. By way of reference, I know that the city has very stringent application requirements, and there's a big application packet before you, and I know that it's late, so I'll try to be as brief and direct as possible. The application presented before you today is clearly because there's a gap in T-Mobile coverage. And although this is in large part to satisfy the need that T-Mobile customers have as a licensee licensed by the Federal Communications Commission, this company, like the few other companies that have been granted these licenses, have an affirmative obligation to build out their networks. And so that's the purpose of this site. From a broader community perspective, clearly the benefit is that we are able to provide, by virtue of some of the antennas that are placed as part of the site, we're able to provide enhanced 911 services to the community at large, whether or not you're a T-Mobile customer. And the wireless technology across the board, regardless of whoever your provider may be, has been pivotal in many communities in providing that emergency 911 response and helping local authorities finesse their response to emergency situations. This particular site does meet, in our opinion, the criteria for a special permit, as the same can be granted by this board, for several pretty significant reasons. The first of which, this is really a co-location, which the ordinance seeks here. At the Lowell General site, there is currently in the cupola, Sprint is as an existing provider. This particular installation would be on the adjacent building and would seek to install panel antennas, and I'm sure that the board's familiar with those, but for the public record, the panel antennas are actually affixed to the side of the building. They do not exceed the existing building height, so they don't protrude above that line, and then they are in fact painted to match the existing structure of the building. So they match the facade and they're flat panel mounted antennas to the building. Again, to minimize any visual impact. All of the supporting equipment will actually be located within the building. So we're not seeking to build out, in some of these sites you have to build out sort of penthouses or screening for the supporting equipment. That is not the case here. It will all be housed within the building itself. And so that being said, and again, knowing that the hour is late, I would open it up to the board if you have any specific questions, either for myself as legal counsel or the RF engineer or site acquisition specialist.
Thank you. Mr. Bailey, any questions, sir, or comment?
So where is your nearest existing site to this site that you're proposing?
I'm going to ask, again, Scott Heffernan has some coverage plots that will illustrate that visually, and then he can actually give you the addresses as well. I believe the coverage plots that are going to be reviewed right now are submitted as part of the application packet,
Okay.
so you should have those as well.
In what enclosure, council?
Tab
Four,
four.
yeah.
You'll see affidavit of radio frequency expert.
Thank
And
you.
immediately behind that are the coverage maps, green coverage maps.
Thank you.
Referring to the, again, to the plots in the application, the closest sites to the proposed facility, there are two that are fairly equidistant away, and they're shown on the plots to the south and the southwest of the proposed facility. The first one is shown with the site ID 4BN0168D. That is a facility located at the Grandview Condos, 527 Pawtucket Boulevard. It's a rooftop installation, facade-mounted antennas mounted to the existing structure. The next site directly due south of this, shown with the cell ID 4BS0284E. That is a facility located on the Marginal Street smokestack, T-Mobile does have antennas on the existing smokestack at that address.
Okay. And this is a co-location, because you mentioned Sprint is already on the existing building,
That
correct?
is correct.
Okay. How long has Sprint been there? Any idea?
Do you know? We think about 4 years, but
Okay.
relatively recent as far as these.
Is there anybody from Lowell General here?
No, we do not have a representative from the hospital, no, sir.
Okay. That's all I have, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Knott, any question, comment?
No comment.
Thank you.
No comment, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Bamayu, any comment, question, sir?
No comment, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. People in the public, is there anyone here in opposition of this proposal? Hearing none, is there anyone here in support of this petition like to speak? Hearing none, public portions is closed. What's the wish of the board?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to comment at this point. There's obviously no opposition here. I think this is one of the best spots for a location, something like this, top of a hospital. It's unseen, aesthetically blends right in. If you were to look at it, it'd be still difficult to identify. So, in my opinion, it's a good spot for something like this, so I do support a special permit. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right. Any other comments? Would you like to, anyone like to make a motion on this?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve.
Seconded.
All right, please call a roll. Mr. Clerk?
Mr. Bailey?
Approve.
I vote to approve. Mr. Geary is absent. Mr. Knox?
Approve.
Mr. Noon?
Approve.
Mr. Bienvenu?
Approve.
Thank you. Your proposal has been approved. Please come up and sign the proposal.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I have to give her this.
The next on the petitions tonight is ZB-2009-59, special permit telecommunication, Clear Wireless LLC, located at 19 Mehmet Road. This is a request for Clear Wireless LLC to install, operate, and maintain a wireless communication facility within existing steeple and church basement at the Pentucket Congregation Church pursuant to Section 7.6 of the zoning ordinance. Sir, please address the board.
Good evening, members of the board, Mr. Chairman. My name is Andrew Thompson, here in representation of Clear Wireless LLC, also referred to as Clearwire. I'm here, I work for Centerline Communications out of Canton, Massachusetts. And obviously I'm here in front of you to present this proposal for the wireless communications facility to be installed at Pawtucket Congregational Church located at 15/19 Mammoth Road. Again, obviously, as the hour is getting late, I'll keep it short and sweet. I know I've been before the board many times. Clearwire is a new wireless carrier coming into the city of Lowell, looking to provide a brand new service. As such, they are currently providing no coverage in the city of Lowell. We do have several sites, as you are aware, that have either come before the board or in one step of the process, whether it's the leasing process, zoning process, or going before the building commissioner for final approval to be built. That being said, this particular site does fit into our overall network design for the city of Lowell, filling in what we do believe is a significant coverage gap in our proposed coverage within the city. Just to speak to the specific proposal with the plans that were submitted with this application, specifically if you turn to page A3 of the plans that were submitted, you can see that Clearwire is actually proposing to replace an upper portion of the cone of the steeple that is approximately 12 feet 11 inches in height. What I guess entails with this replacement is there currently exists a slate roof at this site, and Clearwire will contract a stealth company who specifically builds these types of steeples to replace the existing stealth material with material that is the exact same in size, shape, color, and texture. So again,
Question is, are we going up in height at all?
There's
This-
absolutely no increase in height, no increase in the size of the steeple. It will look exactly the same from the exterior. And also, the equipment is being installed inside the basement, so you'll see, again, no equipment needs to be fenced or anything like that.
So is it existing steeple already?
Absolutely, it's an existing steeple, and again, we will have to replace a portion of the exterior of the steeple with like material that allows excuse me, allows the signal to be transmitted through the steeple, but again, there will be no change in the actual appearance from the exterior of the steeple.
So you cannot see from the outside as
Absolutely
to
not,
the
100%
antennas
concealed.
and whatnot, right?
100% concealed. And again, I would like to also just comment on the fact that this church is a church of historic nature, and we're also running in parallel right now with the Mass Historical Commission, who also has obviously much more stringent review procedures from the perspective of it being a historical church and us actually, making these modifications and ensuring that the character of the church endures, obviously, throughout this process.
Was this proposal submitted to the historical building already and get the approval?
No, it's the Mass Historic Commission. It's actually a state
okay.
agency that we have to go through.
Right.
And that approval process has been started within the past few weeks, similar to this application.
Right. Okay. Anything else you want to add before I turn to the board?
No, that's all.
Thank you. Mr. Bailey, any question or comments, sir?
Yeah, on the 7.6 sections for the handout that you provided, and you're
Yes, sir.
asking, for those subsections that you're asking for requests of waivers, can you, I guess my question, Mr. Vice Chair, is where they're asking for waivers, and the petition is for 7.65, correct?
Yes.
Excuse me, it says section 7.6.
7.6, yes.
So does this fall under each of these subsections that they're asking for waivers on, or are we entertaining the whole of 7.6?
I believe what we're going to vote on and entertain tonight is 7.6, is that's what they requested as petition.
Which includes all the subsections?
I don't think it's,
Okay.
I don't think it would include the subsections.
Mr. Bailey, if I may comment, I think
I was going to say, with that said, why would you ask for waivers?
I think in terms of just addressing all of these needs, and obviously, I think we ran into this with the previous application, there becomes an issue with sort of the board and the city's definition of co-location versus what is,
Right.
I guess, industry standard in terms of where the board sees it as an original carrier already being there. The industry views it essentially as using an existing structure. And again, there's obviously some interpretation there, but I think what we're looking for the waiver here is that specifically the board requires a lot more additional information to be submitted when a brand-new tower is being constructed versus obviously we're utilizing an existing structure that will be 100% concealed.
Okay. And and in your application and in the overview, so the height is 78 feet. That's the 74 and then 78 feet respectively, is what you have here.
Yeah,
Correct.
so those are actually the heights of the antennas that are installed inside the steeple. The
Correct.
existing height of the very top of the steeple is 84 feet.
Is 84?
Yes.
Okay. So you'll be just, a few feet under the actual top of the steeple.
Absolutely. The height of the steeple will remain unchanged.
Yep. And is anybody here from the church? Okay.
My name is John Hamblett, 495 Varnum Avenue. Would you like to, I'm going to speak in favor. I'm the chairman of the Finance and Stewardship Board at Pawtucket Church, and on behalf of those who use the church, I'm asking that you support this request for a special permit. With me tonight are several other citizens of Lowell's, members of the church, and people who use the church who also support this request. First, I'd like to disclose my potential conflicts of interest in this proceeding. I am also on the executive board of the Pawtucketville Citizens Council, and I am chairman of the Zoning and Planning Subcommittee. I have confirmed with the board that I will be here tonight in the capacity of speaking in favor of the application. The members of the Pawtucketville Citizens Council Board have no objections to the application before you, and to date, I have not received any objections by citizens of Pawtucketville, either stated or written. Pawtucket Church is Lowell's oldest continuing congregation. We date back to 1727, when the Varnum family donated the land to the church. To get some perspective, while the city of Lowell has been in existence for 174 years, we've been providing services to the community for a century before that. We are deeply committed to the preservation and restoration of our Romanesque-style church that was built in 1898 on the site of the original church building at the corner of Pawtucket Boulevard and Mammoth Road. We started an extensive restoration program about 10 years ago, and with the help and the support of the Massachusetts Historical Commission, we have received a series of grants to restore our Tiffany quality stained glass windows. Last year, we conducted a complete architectural survey, and this year we will begin construction of barrier-free access to the church. We are delighted, and we were delighted in 2007 to be nominated to and accepted on the National Registry of Historic Places. One condition of the Massachusetts Historic Commission is a very strict preservation restriction on the building. The restriction is far more limiting than the city's zoning laws and our building code. Changes to the exterior of the building are done only with permission of the Secretary of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Clear wire is held to the same standards. I personally negotiated the contract with Clearwire with the help of legal, architectural, and telecommunications specialists. The contract is especially written to recognize the unique needs of an historic church building. The requirements are substantial. It is my understanding that not only will the antenna not be visible, but there will be no visible change to the church. I have talked a little about the building. Let me just briefly describe some of the services the church currently provides to the community. 4 congregations call the church home. The traditional UCC congregation holds an English service, a Brazilian congregation in Portuguese, the Chinese congregation in Mandarin, and our newest worship group, the Women of God, is an African congregation. We have 4 anonymous self-help groups, a state-mandated divorce workshop, a family support play group, a thrift shop open every Saturday. Dinners for the needy are prepared at the church. The Pawtucket Living Arts Center is housed in the church and provides an art series to the public. We are now home to the Lowell Philharmonic Orchestra, who can be heard practicing every Tuesday night. On a busy week, more than 500 people use this building to worship, improve their lives, or simply enjoy the arts. The Clearwire antenna will help us support those community services. We are asking you to approve our application for a special permit. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, let me get back to Mr.
Well, I was just
Bailey.
interested, Mr. Vice Chair, if anybody from the church was here, and
Right.
state for the record, I'm happy that there are some members in attendance, and that I think that bodes well for Clear Wireless, that they have members of the church that are supporting it, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Narsa, your question, comment?
Just a comment. I agree with Mr. Bailey's comments about the comments from members of the church, and also I think the petitioner has been down both roads, and he's probably as happy as we are to hear that this was not a new structure, but something that was already in place, since we already have a petition that we're still waiting to hear on that. So all that being said, I think petitioner has done his homework, and he couldn't have chose a better partner than this particular church, and also the individual who represented this, spoken before, representing Pawtucketville, and he's extremely articulate and prepared every time he comes before us. I commend him, and I wholeheartedly support the petition.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Secretary.
Yes, Mr. Vice Chair, I couldn't agree more with my colleagues. I think this is done definitely with respect to the congregation and historic significance on one, and I'm very, very pleased to see that it will not alter the facade of this building at all, because it's a gorgeous piece of Americana, I'll tell you that. So everything is concealed inside and out. There'll be everything's either in the basement or in the steeple, correct?
Absolutely.
So that's outstanding, that's great. I wouldn't want to see anything like altering this building whatsoever. So I do support the special permit as you present it. Thank you very much.
Mr. Benview, any comment?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
I know that some audience who is member of the church, if anyone in the audience like to speak in support of this, please come up to the podium, state your name and your address, and if you don't want to, you can just raise your hand. How many of you in the audience in support of this petition? For the record, just about everyone in the audience, 6 of them, only 8 left, so maybe another one is for the next petition. So therefore, I would submit it for the record that 6 out of the 8 members in the audience in support of this petition. Are there any of you in the audience who oppose this petition? Well, I hear none. That portion of the public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the board?
Mr. Vice Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Seconded.
Please call the roll, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Bailey?
Approve.
I vote to approve. Mr. Knox?
Approve.
Mr. Noon?
Approve.
Mr. Bienvenu?
Approve.
You may approach and please sign here.
Thank you. Next petitions, ZB 2009-60, request for variance, applicant Rodney Fisher, Jr., the property located on 1519-1527 Middlesex Street. A petition to reduce the number of required parking spaces for martial arts school in accordance to section 6.2 of the zoning ordinance. Sir?
Good evening, everybody. I know it's late and I'm tired, but just on a lighter note, I saved the best for last, I guess.
You wish.
I know. Only.
Please continue.
This is just, was just brought this against our attention because we was trying to, I'm sure I've been here a couple of times before for this particular address here, because we just got through building a retail plaza over in the same area and stuff. And one of the situations that we kind of got into, which is kind of like unforeseen and really not expected, was that, you know, based on the code and stuff, that we had to be concerned about parking and make it so it's possible for us to be able to lease the rest of the spaces that we have on that lot, within that lot, because, you know, that was a challenging project we did there, and I think, you know, you guys were also part of that too, in helping us get it approved and stuff, along with all the other city, the DPW and conservation and stuff, and so, but I think even at the beginning, we had a couple of obstacles and stuff, but even right now, I noticed that even them are supportive in it being there right now, because of they come in there and they even partake in some of the businesses that are there, and even some of them in Budden property even have their kids attending that school there. So in one of the situations that we just want to try to avoid and stuff, that's why I'm requesting right now if we can kind of get a park release based on what the code is requiring for that school there, which says 50. And I know I'm there every single day, morning, noon, and night, because I'm the property manager. And then also I help the other businesses that are in there now, because I actually did the tenant fit up for them and stuff. And I know that there's not at any point in time of the day that there's never been enough parking for anybody that's even in that building right now, the school or anything. And I think the experience I had in it from that school and stuff, that even when there is a busy time, that it's never been full. They never exceeded the 50 spaces that they was allotted.
How many businesses are in there? I thought about 5 or 6 maybe?
I have the 3 right now. Minute Press, which actually 4. Minute Press, which that's the first unit.
Right.
A nail salon, a hair salon, and then I have another business down at the end, which is a
convenience store?
an Asian market.
Right. So you have about
3 more spaces left.
Yeah, right. What do you plan to put in those 3 more spaces?
Well, one right now, I'm in the process, I have the application already in the building department for a Thai restaurant.
Thai restaurants?
Yes,
How many spaces, how many sitting, how many tables you propose?
10 tables. They want to put 10 tables in there.
And what's the operation of this restaurant?
Well, right now, they're going to be doing takeout and then probably just have some, a couple tables if somebody wanted to stay in there and eat.
10 table, and how many chair per table?
There's 4 tables to,
4 chair per table, right?
yes.
And what's the other 2?
Well, the other 2 units are empty right now. So, I mean, whatever is left for parking space pretty much is either going to be like has to be some type of retail store in order for it not to exceed whatever the amount of space is that's going to be available. But I think even at that point in time, we're even working on trying to get another space that's abutted next to it and stuff, with which is owned by Middlesex Rento. They have a small little lot over there, which we're in, just right in the talking phase with them about purchasing that down the road, in the event if we needed more space in the future.
What's the, how busy is the school, the martial arts school?
Well, it varies. Most of their busy time is usually they have night classes, and I think I gave you a schedule of a lot of the classes, and they're usually only an hour duration, so they're constantly, changing out of there. And even from being down there, because I actually monitor it for a while, and even going down there, most of the parents, they usually drop their kids off, and they go off and they go do something else, and they come back and pick them up when their class is done. And usually I found out most of the time when the parents do stay is like when the kids that they're doing the class, they are either getting graduating or getting a belt, a new belt change.
Let me turn to my fellow board members, Mr. Bailey, if he has any question and comment, because I have some more later.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So, Mr. Fisher, what brought this up now regarding the parking? I mean, the martial arts building existed before the plaza, correct?
Correct, yes.
So what's caused the issue now regarding the parking?
Well, I never even thought it would even be a problem, because I thought all of it was covered at the beginning when we went from the planning board to the conservationists, when we presented the whole project and stuff. So, and I think even the owner really didn't think that was going to be an underlying issue right at this point when we started trying to fill those other units and stuff. Because we just went based on what we got approved on as far as what, the pre-existing building, which was recreation, and then that building being retail. So I don't think and I don't want to say it was an overlook or an oversight on everybody's behalf as far as if we was going to run into an issue with parking and being able to allow businesses or new businesses to come into that area. Because I think most of our focal point at that time when we was building this, and I think that was everybody, because I looked at the original picture, and I think everybody was more or less probably focusing, and I'm just saying, just my view, that they was looking at the new development and stuff, and that may have been, and because when we look at it, we was looking at the layout of the new picture that's going in that area, and then the existing building was just a square building, just a picture, the way, how they put it on the print. So I think that was the focal point as far as where the parking was going to be utilized. And I'm, because even the architect, they probably should have even probably caught that too, or even brought that to our attention at that point, and we probably could have been, some adjustment probably could have been made, or it could have been a more further discussion about it at that point instead of have to being worried about it now.
Maybe Commissioner Camacho can enlighten us as to why it came before the board.
Well, originally, when this project started, the developer was well aware of the fact that he would be limited as to what he could put into each of these units, limitation being based on what would be required for parking, which is based on the occupancy. The issue that brought this to fruition and to the board tonight is that The restaurant he referred to, they're looking to do a sit-down, and that would require more parking spots. On the other hand, if it was a takeout restaurant, it would require less. Right now, I received this at the 11th hour this afternoon, more or less. There's, the martial arts area has parking for 50. The printer has allowed to have 5, the nail salon 3, the hair salon 3 as well, and the market 3. That brings it to a total of 64, and he only has 62 spaces there at this particular point in time. I think what he wants to do is trade off some of the parking that's designated for the martial arts, and utilize some of that for the strip mall, because he's over by 2 now. And I think Rodney's argument at this point in time is to try to convince this board that 50 spaces are not required in the martial arts studio. I mean, that's the essence of what's happening here with this petition.
So we're
Thank you,
talking
Mr. Camacho.
about,
Go ahead, Mr.
I'm
Bailey,
sorry.
sir. Go ahead, sir.
So we're talking about 2 short spaces? Is that what you were saying?
Right, I mean, the way it's set up right now, there's a total of 62 provided in that lot, and the count is bringing it up to 64, with 54 of those spaces reserved for the martial arts building.
But that's with 2 or 3 vacancies at the strip mall, Mr. Commissioner.
I believe 3,
3
correct.
vacancies. So something's going to go in there at some point.
I think the argument that he has to make to this board is that the martial arts needs less than 50, and somehow make that determination and show this board that some of those spaces can be reallocated to the strip mall.
What's the capacity for the martial arts studio?
That I don't know off the top of my head. I don't have that particular, that formula in front of me.
How about the restaurant itself, do you know?
Well, there's two ways to look at the restaurant. If it's a takeout, it's much less than if it were a sit-down restaurant, and it's all based on the square footage and what's available for seating. We were able to get together a program so that he could do a fit-up for a takeout, provided he put extra items in that restaurant that would, excuse the pun, but eat up some floor space, such as some vending machines, et cetera, so that couldn't be removed with tables.
Right.
So he'd be limited to 1 or 2 tables, if any at all. But I think his argument here, I apologize for not having it here, but I don't know what the formula is for the number of spaces to be used in order to calculate the number of spaces needed for the martial arts studio.
Perhaps the petitioner could answer. Do you know how many students, numbers are in attendance, say in the course of, or registered at the martial arts studio?
Well, there's quite a few students registered, and it's probably about 1,000 students, but they all have different times. Some are during the day, and you can even pass by there during the day, and you can see there's probably about 6, 7 cars in the parking lot, even with the businesses that are there. And then at night, when predominantly most of the classes start for like the adults and stuff, and like the younger kids, because they have students from ages 4 all the way up to 90 attending the school. So the younger ones, they come a little bit earlier, like around 3:30, and they're just there for like about an hour or 45 minutes, and they're in and out. And it's probably just about 15 of the kids, so there's not a whole lot. It's not completely, it's never been completely full. I would say probably an average of 25 to 30 students in there probably at one time.
And right now you have 3 vacancies at the...
In the plaza itself, yeah.
And what, have you been approached by businesses?
Yes, I have someone that's actually interested in them last 2 units.
What kind of business?
There's a grocery store. They're interested in doing a grocery store, and one of the units, they want 2 units. One of them wants a grocery store, and the other one's interested in doing a clothing retail store, which the minimum space they would need is 2 parking spaces.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
I just want to make a few notes that the planning board did vote to deny this variance due to a few facts that, that the applicant did not make it clear how many parking spaces are needed or how much relief is needed being sought regarding the martial arts studio. Secondly, the planning board, they did a site visit, and the parking lot was near capacity, or full capacity. And the third is reviewing the site plan, the board raised parking capacity, specifically considering a tenant mix that may deviate from what was the proposed use identified on the site plan. So, I see, you know, a potential perfect storm developing here. I mean, we want to help Mr. Fisher. I mean, he's got a new building there, he pays taxes, and we want to see his building full. But, I mean, with 2 or 3 vacancies in this strip mall, you know, we could potentially have a problem here. I understand the martial arts studio is a lot of children, all right? You may say the 25, 30s, and there's a lot of drop-offs. Am I right? Because I live nearby and I noticed it.
Yes, yeah.
So that bodes in your favor. But however, I mean, if you have 3 or 4 restaurants and retail anticipating to move in, we could, you know, have a potential problem here.
Well, I mean, because I've been kind of selected, because I do I'm also the leasing agent for him too, so I pretty much, and we've been that selective with trying to let people in and trying to stay in compliance with what is available now that we inherit this situation here.
All right, well, Mr. Commissioner, I have a question for you. Now, if we did see it clear, it's the point I made earlier. I mean, the martial arts studio is a lot of children, a lot of drop-offs, you know, pick up and drop off type thing, which I understand. But now, his empty units, I'd like to see him come back to this board for approval now. If we were to see it clear to approve this variance, I'm not saying it's going to go either way right now, but, you know, I'd like to have some say in the future what's going to go in those remaining empty units, is my point.
The state building code dictates, and so does especially the zoning ordinances, as to what's allowed. If he doesn't have the parking, then businesses A, B, and F cannot go in, but F and G or X, Y, Z can. There's 2 things in looking at this, and I'm not absolutely clear. It appears that most of the hours of operation are between 4 and 8 o'clock, most nights. And there are some very open areas where the studio isn't open at all, some large amounts of times. That's one issue. The other issue is there's a formula in here, and I want to thank Bill for bringing this tonight. I left my book at the office, but even with this, I'm unable to determine, until I get some additional information, what's the proper formula to use for the martial arts studio. And in all fairness to Rodney, I think he would be in his best interest to probably, and this is his call, to probably ask for a continuance so that we can sit down and nail this down a little bit better, because I think the reason planning and development took the position they did is because they didn't have enough information to say yes.
No, it's unclear, and it's unclear to me as well. I understand their thinking, I really do.
Myself as well. I think it would be in his best interest to at least postpone this and request a continuance until we can sit down and nail this down a little bit closer.
I do concur with both Mr. Secretary and Mr. Commissioner that the petitioner did not provide enough information. For example, you have to really be able to come and tell us that the number of students and what percentage of the children that being dropped off was the adult driving to this martial art places. So you have to come back with all this information, and I would support the idea of having it continue so that you have complete information and present to this board, and so that we can have a better understanding of what's in there and what's already in there and what's going to be in there in the future, whether or not you have enough space for us to vote on this. So, but before I hear from you whether or not you would, request a continue, let me turn to our last board member, Mr. Benview, if he has any comment or questions, sir.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, those were my concerns. It seemed like there was not enough information, and my questions were going to be also to the building commissioner about the capacity of the buildings, what the buildings were set up for originally, and now obviously in these trying times we're trying to lease these spaces out to other things that, retail versus other things, restaurants and stuff that require more parking. So I would be in favor of letting him continue to next month so we can get a handle on this.
Yeah, originally, the way that was set up, that strip mall, that the developer, the owner was well aware of the fact that depending on the nature of the business that went in there, that would determine the formula to be used to dictate the amount of parking spaces, and there would be some limitations. But with that being said, I'm not convinced this would or would not work, because I think we're missing too much information here. And it wouldn't be doing him any justice, the applicant to do him any justice to make a decision at this point. My recommendation to him is to continue to the next meeting, and he and I should sit down and let's look at this with a fine-tooth comb to see if it's gonna work, because there's not a lot of room here for
No, certainly not.
for play.
With 3 empty units, certainly not, Mr. Commissioner, I agree with you.
What would you like to do, Mr. Fisher, sir?
Well, I mean, I'll definitely do the continuance to sit down with the commissioner and then try to reevaluate it. But then one of the other things I want you to just keep in mind, because it's actually kind of difficult to give you an exact number because of some of the people that come to the class, it's only a short period of time that they're there, whether they come 1 week or 2 weeks to do a small class like we have on Saturday. The women come early in the morning and they do an aerobic class for an hour, and it's probably every other week. So
Try that, Mr. Fisher, try.
I will, yeah.
What's your wish right now? Would you like to request to continue on this, or would you like us to vote?
Yeah, continuance as soon as possible.
All right, thank you, sir. What's the wish of the board? Yes, Mr. Commissioner, sir.
Yeah, so that continuance would be for the next meeting, which I believe
Yes,
is on the
sir,
25th.
February
If you feel that's sufficient, Mr. Commissioner, you can get it done?
That should give us plenty of time, and no other notices will be sent out?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Vice Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Just a comment to the petitioner, just so you understand, the commissioner meeting with you, that there is a formula, and the formula, I believe, would be the square footage and the type of business, and those are the criteria. So the fact that you offer your insight about particular students coming at a particular time won't impact the actual decision, because there is an actual formula that's used. It'll be the square footage and the type of business, and that'll help the commissioner determine how close you are and exactly what your needs are going to be when you come back.
All right.
Thank you.
So, hold on, Mr. Fisher. What's the wish of the board?
With that being said, I'll make a motion to continue till January the 25th, 2010.
Seconded.
Mr. Secretary, please call the roll, sir.
Mr. Bailey? I vote to continue. Mr. Knox? Mr. Noon?
Continue.
Mr. Bienvenu?
Continue.
Mr. Fisher, this matter continue to February 5th, sir.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Is there any other business that we have here? Do I hear motions?
Yep. Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so this hearing to adjourn. Thank you.